apologize for making you wait. It really was not our intent, but we had a very long executive session, so I do again tell you that we are sorry to make you sit and wait for us to come in. With that said, we are now going to say the pledge, and those of us who would like to join us are welcome to do so. I pledge allegiance The mission statement of the City School District of Albany is that we will work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. And I now turn over to the Superintendent, Mrs. Adams, for her report.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Madam President, members of the board. At the start of this school year, the Board of Education and myself and our district's senior leadership team began the series of meetings to chart a course for our district's progress, both over the course of the current school year as well as into the future. The first outcome of that strategic planning was our new district vision, mission, and goals, which the board adopted in the fall. These elements are now at the core of all of our work and planning as we move forward on behalf of our 9,600 students and their families. Beginning with tonight's meeting, we will provide updates on 3 key areas of that strategic vision: human resources, which is a focus at tonight's meeting; community partnerships and community engagement, which will be on our agenda at the April 12th meeting; and academic progress, which will be on the April 26th agenda. Our focus in the area of human resources centers on our work to enhance the delivery of quality instruction, build leadership capacity, increase accountability, and diversify our workforce. Our first priority at the start of the school year was to recruit a new HR administrator to lead these efforts. We are very fortunate to find Mr. Matthew Petrin, who you will hear from later in this meeting. Under his leadership, we are focused on streamlining our HR practices and procedures to improve effectiveness and expanding our recruitment efforts to attract diversity and candidates with other experiences that we have for the open positions here and throughout our district. We look forward to sharing more information with you about these efforts later tonight. We've enjoyed a very positive and inspirational day yesterday at Albany High School and at our 3 middle schools. As you know, our students took part of the national movement to remember the victims of last month's school shooting in Parkland, Florida, and to advocate for measures to enhance safety as a result of that tragedy. At all 4 of our secondary schools, our students came forward to develop messages they wanted to share with their peers and their own unique forms of delivering those messages. Staff worked in partnership with the students to develop these plans in ways that ensured the safety of everyone involved, while also honoring the intent and purpose of the observances. As educators, it is our role to support our students and educate them in the effective ways to have their voices heard and their voices taken seriously. I am proud of our students and grateful to all of our faculty and staff members for their care and diligence in making appropriate preparations. It was a very powerful day. I would like to take a moment for a special acknowledgement of an item that is included in the routine consent portion of our agenda this evening. Former Albany High School interim principal Dale Ghetto has submitted her official resignation. Dale originally had planned to do this a year ago, but graciously committed to return to her leadership position at the high school to allow the district an opportunity to conduct a thorough search for her replacement. Dale has served this school district and this community with energy and passion for 31 years. First as an elementary school teacher for a decade, and then as our first district-wide behavioral specialist. She was an administrator at Hackett Middle School, Brooklyn, and North Albany Academy from 2001 to 2010, when she transitioned to Albany High School. Both as a member of the high school's leadership team and as the interim principal for 2.5 years, Dale has been instrumental in the success of Albany High School. Albany High is on a steady upward trajectory and its strongest position in many years. The State Education Department recently announced that Albany High had its highest graduation rate in more than a decade. This type of progress is always a team effort, to be sure, but Dale has been a key leader on the team for many years, and she will be missed. I wish her all the best in whatever comes her way and all of the choices that she makes in the future. I look forward to an opportunity to celebrate her career and her service to our children and our community in the near future. May we offer a round of applause for Ms. Dale Ghetto. At this time, I'd like to provide an update on our snow days. We used the last of our 3 snow days on March 2nd, so Memorial Day weekend in May will consist of the traditional 3-day weekend. But as you know, we need an additional snow day because last week we did take one. I'm sorry, because we needed an additional snow day last week to ensure the safety of our students and staff. Please note that the use of this 4th unplanned snow day will have no impact on the rest of the school year for our students. Our students will not need to make up that lost day of instruction. However, due to contractual obligations, we will need to make up that day for our employees represented by the Albany Public School Teachers Association. We are in discussion with union leaders on the best way to do this, and I will provide an update when we come to an agreement. Unfortunately, we are aware that there is a potential for more snow days next week and possibly even the week after that, so we will be watching the weather very closely. We sincerely hope that this will not have an impact on instruction, but please stay tuned. A reminder that spring recess is coming up in a couple of weeks. It will begin Friday, March 30th. Our schools will also be closed the following week, April 2nd through April 6th. As noted a moment ago, the unexpected use of the 4th snow day last week will have no impact on spring recess for our students. However, we still have some conversations we need to speak with our union leaders because we're not sure how that's going to impact for our teachers. I would now like to invite Principal Jody Comerford to tell us more about the great things happening here at Albany High School.
Am I on? There we go. And board for having us here tonight. I'd like to start by introducing one of our seniors here. This is Kavanthan Jayaparan. And he was very inspired yesterday by the march that we had at the high school. And he came in today in his suit requesting to have a meeting with me. And I hadn't had the opportunity to meet him yet. And he advocated for himself and really talked a lot about how inspired he was and how he wants to continue with some student activism initiatives at the high school. So I'll let him tell you a little more about his story. He has only been here, though, for a year, a little over a year, last November, and is looking to go into the Air Force after he graduates. And he came here from Sri Lanka. Very dedicated. He has a full course load this year, taking AP classes, and he has some really neat ideas about how to spread the word about the shootings in America. And I'm going to let him talk a little more about himself for a moment.
Hi. First of all, I want to feel comfortable. I'm really never talked to people like this before. And I'm Kavanthan Jayaparan, and also known as Kavi. And I'm a 12th grader, and my favorite subjects are like forensic science, digital filming, and photography. The first thing I want to bring up, like, I learned how to speak up about me by digital filming. That's how I started to speak up, and then I want to make a change in everything that I do. And the great thing about the school that I like is around this building you can see most of the good people around me. like I never stood up in one place and then know where should I go and stuff, because I had always somebody like to help me out where to go and stuff. Like even when I decide I need to talk out, I need to speak up about the gun shoot, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to stay and stuff. Somebody pointed out to my principal, so I just straight away wanted to go and talk to her. And then the positive actor, sorry, thank you. Aspect of the school is we have literally a lot of opportunity than I had in my last school. I'm a refugee from Sri Lanka to move to Malaysia, where I actually ran away from the country that I was born in due to the civil war that we're having. It's actually a human destination where my government started to kill our own race, so we had to run away and stuff. Uh, there's literally a big history behind it. I'm sorry, I can't go through it. And then, other than that, in Malaysia, we didn't have like a great opportunity with the college and stuff. The maximum education we can have is the high school. After high school, we couldn't go to any colleges. Even if we do, their demand is literally a lot, where we couldn't afford. So we had many. I know many friends from Malaysia that studied really well, like better than me, actually, and then they are now working at MACD and KFC. I wanted to do something for them, but I always felt like I'm not in the position. And then I also wanted to thank all of you, like, for listening to me, and then to coming to my home. I mean, to the school. I feel this is my home though, because I spend most of the time here, other than my home. So, thank you for coming here, and it is really glad to see you guys. And then I'm feeling literally nervous. Thank you.
Thank you, Covington. So I didn't get the memo on my presentation this evening. So he literally left my office, and I found out a few minutes later. And I said, oh my, I'm going to call him back down and have him be a representative for us tonight. So it was very short notice for him as well as being a little nervous. All right, so I'll get started on the Albany High presentation. All right, I failed my lesson. Okay. So this is the vision and mission for Albany High School. Staff, students, parents, and community will work together to ensure every student will graduate within 4 years, career ready, college ready, and engaged citizens of the global society. We will work together to focus our priorities, use data, and inform our instruction and planning, and create rigorous academic and extracurricular opportunities for our students. We really use this to guide a lot of our work at the high school in creating our SMART goals. Oh, down. That's why it's beeping at me. Sorry. For all of our committees, our department, each department, and our, departments, committees. I missed one. Oh, our building and curriculum team, leadership team. I'll get into that in a little while, but these are our current demographics for the high school. On campus, we have just over 2,000 students. The total enrollment, though, for the high school right now is a little over 2,500, including our high school students at other programming in the district. That includes the Clemens Center, our night school students. And then these are all of our classroom teachers in the building for each department. I'm not going to read them all, but you can see the numbers there. We have just about 168 classroom teachers, and then we do have some teachers on assignment, including, our online success teacher, our Apex teacher, some of our coaches, and those other kind of TOSA positions. All right, so we are under receivership, as most of you in the room know. So these are our indicators for receivership, which are all embedded in our SEP plan for the high school. We have reached 2 of these indicators already for the graduation rate. Those are the grad year, the 5-year graduation rates for by August, and then our 5-year grad rate by August for Black students. So we have achieved those already. We are, everything in green means we are on the trajectory for those. We're actually really on the trajectory for ELA and math as well, due to our action plans that we have for those areas. We just haven't had students actually sit for the exams yet. Our tenant 3 work, we're currently, I'm jumping around a little bit because I wanted to start with the good things of the, the indicators that we've met already. So I'll go back to the top for tenant 3. We have an action plan around that too. That is our state visit. And they will be coming in looking at all of the work that we've done in that area. So last year, we scored a level 2 there, and we're looking to move to a level 3 this year. We have a whole timeline and a plan for that. We meet weekly with the whole administrative team on that. In addition to 2 of the principals doing a lot of the work around that, we have an additional meeting for that weekly. We've also included the school improvement team in that work. The freshman 5, we are on track as well for that with 71 students on track right now. And then, as I said, with the math and ELA, we have the action plans for that. I want to say that we have 7 RTI teams functioning at the high school this year, which is new, who are all focusing on this work as well. And those RTI teams meet weekly, drilling down to individual students and the work that our teachers are doing in department meetings and in their common planning times is drilling down to individual students. We know who these students are and what they need to succeed on this. All right, so these are our actual tenants in the SET plan, and these are the goals that we set for the high school based on all of the feedback from state ed and from the data, our own internal data. So for tenant 2, this was achieved already for January 2017. We actually completed this work a little earlier than that, challenging our departments and committees to have SMART goals, which drill down right into our department teams and our common planning times. All of our common planning teams at the high school have SMART goals as well, and they work on those weekly. For tenant 3, we've actually had a lot of things go into place in the last 2 months with the MOA around common planning for us at the high school, and we've developed even more monitoring systems for our classroom walkthroughs and our data analysis in common planning. We also have a monitoring system for our data teams now, so we're going in and giving teachers feedback in classrooms on their lesson planning and instruction, in addition to their data teams and giving them feedback on the work that they're doing in those. Tenant 4, differentiating instruction, really using the lesson plan to focus at the high school on student engagement, higher order questioning, and student feedback. That's all driven by the feedback that we've gotten from the state. And all of these things really work together too with the common planning, our walkthrough systems, and the monitoring systems that we've built around that. So when administrators in the district's folks go into classrooms, we're looking at those specific items and giving teachers feedback on them. For tenant 5, this is all around our discipline and preventative strategies that we've implemented here at the high school. Again, that goes back to our RTI, our academy principals and support staff are looking at that data on a weekly basis. We look at individual students. Students are tiered. With the RTI system that we put in place this year, we have over 700 students who have a teacher or staff member in this building connected to them as their RTI case manager. Our teachers have taken on 5 students each this year to track and monitor, and hopefully we'll have students cycle in and out of that system. And then our RTI teams themselves are doing that work as well. So that's a huge shift for the high school to be drilling down to that many students. And then 10 and 6 is our family and community engagement, really trying to change the level of engagement that we have for our families here at the high school and increase that. And that is also with community members. I've been meeting with that team recently, trying to come up with better timelines and systems for engagement here at the high school. I just met with the family engagement coordinator this morning, and we have created some subcommittees within that. So we currently have the Family Advisory Board up and running, which is new this year, in addition to the Family and Community Engagement team. And then our homeschool coordinators, we have a team of folks with them as well. So we actually have 3 subcommittees working on that tenant. And then last but not least, some recent celebrations that we've had at the high school. So the line was out the door tonight for hairspray starting a little before 6 o'clock. So people are here an hour earlier. This is probably the biggest production we've had here at the high school. There's over 60 students in that, including, so that picture was actually just taken this evening and first time in full costume and wardrobe. So that runs all this weekend at 7 p.m. Shameless plug, and then our matinee on Sunday. But get here early because it will indeed be difficult to get in. We had people actually sitting in on the rehearsals all week as well. On the picture on the top right is from the march yesterday. I don't know if everyone in the room saw the publicity that we received, but we had our Falcon Council here and our Peace and Social Action Committee come to me a few weeks ago asking to participate in this. It was student-led, student-driven. They created the agenda on their own, gave speeches, really inspired some folks that in the building that we have here, and the students are planning on some future work. So I think going along with Tenant 6, we're really going to have a lot more engagement here at the high school. To another student-driven event was, there's Shafiq on the bottom, our student council president. That was at the Black History Night celebration. Again, students were highly involved in that, created speeches, emceed the night, and really had some powerful words that evening. And then in the far bottom-hand corner, right-hand corner, is the JROTC military ball. Last week, again, all student facilitated at that event. And, I think I've really seen a huge change this year with, so many events being planned by the adults in this building. It's really a great change. I think we're going in the right direction, not only with our graduation rate at the high school, but really our students wanting to be involved and proud here at the high school. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Comerford. It is so nice to see all the reports that you're giving and looking at, especially one of the things that I wanted to comment on is it is very impressive to see that 5 students per teacher with the monitoring and the mentoring for our students. That personal touch with our students is extremely important. And so I give a shout out to you as well as to the faculty who takes on that responsibility. We appreciate the teachers for doing that, as well as the support that our support staff gives in the classroom. So thank you again very much. That concludes our report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Principal, very much for that. So just on behalf of the board, I want to echo the appreciation that you expressed, Mrs. Adams, to Mrs. Ghetto for her years of dedicated service and her absolutely, anybody who was ever seeing her in the buildings, her absolutely true love for our children. That is something that was always very, very evident. She was the greatest of Falcon cheerleaders. Very few people could have gotten their cars Post-it noted entirely and laughed about it. But she advocated for some of our most vulnerable children in the district and was a great advocate for all of the children, especially our children of color. And we thank her for all of the years of service. That said, we are on to public comment now. And Ms. Franz, Laura Franz.
So good evening. My name is Laura Franz, and I'm a 20. Oh yeah, you got to read the thing, right?
I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
read
I
the
have
thing.
not missed doing that ever, and so I'm just bowled over by this turnout. The Albany Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, students, and other people to our meeting. We appreciate community input about the decisions we are making. In addition to accepting comments during the public comment period, we also accept comments by email, phone, or postal mail. While you are making your remarks, please keep in mind that by law, information about individual students and specific district staff cannot be shared. Every student and every staff member deserves to know that concerns about them will not be aired in public. Also, keep in mind that public comment is not the best place to first alert the district to a concern you have. Please share concerns first with relevant staff, such as the teacher or principal. If you feel the concern is not addressed adequately, you may appeal to that person's supervisor up the chain of command, if necessary, to the superintendent. Decisions made by the superintendent may be appealed to the board. Finally, please note that the board generally does not respond during the public comment period. If you need a response, please consider contacting us by email, phone, or postal mail. When I recognize you, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. You will be given a 1-minute notice and a 10-second notice, and I will notify you if your time has expired. Sorry, Laura.
No worries. So good evening. My name is Laura Franz. I am a 24-year veteran teacher of the district and the very proud president of the Albany Public School Teachers Association, and it is as their representative that I speak to you tonight. As of today, the Albany teachers have gone 623 days without a contract. Now, that's not said with acrimony, but rather as a statement of fact. I can also reasonably state that I know this board respects and supports their teachers and that we are valued employees. We know that you recognize the hard work, dedication, and caring we demonstrate day in and day out as we work in service of the children of the city of Albany. But working without a contract has cast a shadow. It has introduced doubt and uncertainty into our collective understanding of our value and worth. It is like a cloud has settled over us, and although we're not going to change what we're doing simply because it's cloudy, going so long without the sun is having an impact on how we feel. But we do have hope. Albany, as the capital of New York, is a democratic place, a sanctuary city, a union town, and we know that this board has repeatedly demonstrated support to the progressive ideals that are representative of the politics of this place. And in light of that, we believe that you share our hope that we can find our way to a successful contract. 1 week from today, we will engage in our first mediation session in the impasse process. The ABSTA team truly does look forward to continuing to work with the district administration and district council to break through the challenges that we face at that bargaining table. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura. Alana Klein.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank the district as a whole for the professional response to the students' desire to have their voices heard yesterday. As you may have heard, some districts I heard in the area and around the country weren't as supportive, so I did want to thank you for that. Another thing that I wanted to alert you to was in the past about week, 2 employees of school districts, not locally here, but have had incidents with accidental discharges of firearms, which first goes to the fact that they don't know a thing about gun safety. Second off, one student in, I believe, California was actually injured. So if you're keeping track of students this new method is saving, you're actually in the negative numbers. Third, I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with this quote unquote prank called swatting. It's where people call the SWAT team to a bogus address or something like that as a so-called prank. Well, this is actually quite dangerous and actually has happened with responses to false gun violence reports. So anything we can do to spread awareness about the danger of that would be good. The next thing I want to get into is bullying. I don't know if you saw a couple days ago, a 12th grader in South Haven, Mississippi, I believe is a state, hung themselves, took their life because of bullying, because they were obese or picked on, said they were obese, overweight, lazy. There was at least one report saying that the victim was bisexual. Not that that matters, but I know this district has a very strong policy against anti-bullying and everything like that, but not knowing exactly what the policy is, I can tell you that whatever we're doing, it's not enough, and you don't find out that it's not enough until something happens. So I urge you all to, again, this is only my second meeting, so I don't know all the details, continue taking a proactive approach to this issue, because when I was in sixth grade, there might have been some stuff going on, but nothing was so bad that it made a 12-year-old want to take their life. It's just sad where we've gotten to in this country. So again, no guns in schools, and keep up proactive about anti-bullying programs, acceptance and diversity, which I know that stuff was mentioned a little bit in the previous comments. And lastly, boycott the NRA, Black Lives Matter, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alana. Lauren Manning.
Hi. So I just wanted to come back because as I've been digging into this middle school issue, I just find the facts get more and more disturbing. So since I've been here last, I found out that there were 2 years of reconfiguration committee meetings held up on 100 Waterville Ave that had the involvement of 10 parents. Very problematic, but I'm glad to see the agenda item for the April 12th school board meeting is to address community engagement. However, I have FOIL requested the demographic data for O'Neill Middle School, and when the school district asked us taxpayers to fund the new middle school, what you didn't tell us is it would be segregated. There are 300 black children and 27 white children, compared to, say, Hackett's 2015-2016 data of 245 black kids to 147 white kids, Harriet Myers, 377 black, 132 white. They're not segregated, our school is. So now you're asking us, because you're using this feeder enrollment model, which will send those same school children to the new middle school that you're going to create, whether it be in Arbor Hill or in North Albany. I have contacted NYCLU because their thing this year is school desegregation. They asked me specifically what I wanted of them. I told them I would like them to send the city school district a cease and desist letter that you will not open up one more segregated school in Arbor Hill. I think you hear my voice shaking because, like, this is Jim Crow segregation numbers. 300 black children, 27 white. All right. This is Jim Crow. You did not tell taxpayers you wanted them to fund a segregated middle school in Arbor Hill, where most of the elementary schools are already segregated. So we look forward to our kids getting to middle school to come out of these segregated schools, and now you're further segregating them until they get to Albany High. I would really ask that you guys pull these numbers because, again, I can't describe it any differently. These are Jim Crow segregation numbers. It's unacceptable. I do not believe anybody on the board, the superintendent, supports segregation, but you have to address it. You cannot open another school using this feeder enrollment model that gives us these numbers in Arbor Hill. You're not segregating Myers, you're not segregating Hackett, do not segregate Arbor Hill. And this is beyond moving the school, which we're still totally opposed to. I just left the Neighborhood Arbor Hill Association meeting. They are up there complaining about lack of traffic safety lights, traffic safety, children almost being hit by cars. They are getting no support from you guys with the police department to get what they need over there. And you want to put our elementary school students up there, and you're not even giving the support to the middle school students. So I would ask that you address the traffic safety issues and the segregation issues at O'Neill before you attempt to bring any more middle schools into Arbor Hill. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to accept routine consent? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Savage. Any set-asides? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting routine consent? That is unanimous. Thank you so much. We are on to the next item, which is, that's great, workforce diversity.
Madam President, members of the board, I have been here a total of 7 months, and Matthew's only been here for 4 months. And so in that time, I've had the opportunity to examine our district structure and organization from a systemic lens. Cabinet members were asked to review the processes and procedures within their respective assignments and begin the process of realigning various tasks in order to streamline our approaches and improve organizational effectiveness. We have great things happening here in the City School District of Albany, and tonight we would like to start in this 3-part series. We'd like to start by highlighting some of the changes that you're going to see within HR and emphasize some of the practices that we are moving toward. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Petron.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, Board of Education. I'm really looking forward to taking this opportunity to share some of the great things that we're doing and some of the changes we're making. I thought it would be good, yes, thank you. I thought it would be good to kind of just outline first the objectives of our department. You know, here are our objectives. I'm not going to read them to you, but we've built these in a way to align with the mission and vision of the school district. Our role, although we're not in the classroom with children, is to be supportive of the professionals in the school. So our job is to make their job better. So that's our primary objective. Most of our conversation tonight will talk about the recruiting activities that we perform, because we are beginning that hiring season, which is ever consuming of us. But I thought it would also be helpful to outline some of the big milestones that happen that really dictate and drive the way we go to business these next few months. Beginning in the year, we get a bunch of retirements, so people that are interested in moving on to the next phase of their lives. Next to that is the apps to transfers, internal teachers requesting to transfer to different locations. About 30 retirements to date is what we've received, and about a dozen apps to transfers. All in, we've got about 40 to 50 postings up, and that's kind of going to be our vacancy driving vacancy rate for the next few months. After we get some opportunities, we look at posting the summer school positions, because those come first. Then we post all of our vacancies for the year. As those postings are out there, the HR team, as well as partnering with our administrative team, will be attending job fairs so that we are out actively recruiting candidates, connecting with them, and getting them engaged with our positions. Those happen March through May, and then finally, you know, the rest of spring and summer is really focused on hiring, getting people ready for the school year. kind of outlined the milestones, right? Now let's talk about some of the changes we've made. You know, the team has really done a lot of great work. I'm just here putting a pretty bow on those things. The first is the recruiting materials. We needed to update them to reflect the new mission and vision. I thought it was a great time to dust them off and freshen up the look. We made the folder of the recruiting packet a little bit more clean lines, a little bit more modern. We created a little handout, a little trifold that talks about the HR activities that we have to offer. In addition to that, we provided some details about our city, about the opportunities we have, and about our school district. So we can give that to candidates and say, here's what we have to offer. Not stopping there, we also rebranded our business cards and our applications so that they match the rest of the color scheme for the district. We're also looking to make things digital, so we created the applications as fillable PDFs, and they're out on the website. I talked about recruiting fairs. We have some pretty productive fairs that we attend. So for example, we usually attend the local St. Rose Fair, the Mid-Hudson Fair, which is hosted by SUNY New Paltz, gets us some great teacher candidates. In addition, we look for our support staff at the Capital Region Fair, the Dr. Martin Luther King Fair held at the Empire State Plaza, and the Albany Job Fair. So we find some great candidates from there. Trying to do a little something different, try something new. We're going out to the historically black colleges and universities on the East Coast. We're starting right now in the Mid-Atlantic region, kind of see if we can diversify our candidate pool and start to build relationships with those colleges so that we can maybe engage teachers and administrators. Finally, last but not least, you know, I've talked about process and reporting all the time. These are some of the things that we're working on. We're documenting the policies and procedures of how we go to business in HR. This has, been helpful for me as I've been learning what the team does and how we go to business, but also it's been helpful for the team. They're able to see how they connect, how the data flows through the system, and we're able to identify roadblocks and streamline processes. So we're hoping to have a skeleton of the handbook for the 2018-19 school year. We're going to use that, make some tweaks as we go through the year, and really drive how we go to business. Knowing that we don't do it alone, we've tapped into our administrator and principal ranks to kind of say, how could we help you? How could we be more effective for you? So we're factoring in their changes. And then finally, and Mr. Baker will appreciate this, you know, we like to use data, and I'm trying to leverage the systems that we have and make them integrate and have them do the heavy lifting for us so we don't have to. So we're doing some cleanup there. Talking about some next steps, where we're going to go, what we're going to do. As mentioned, we're creating a standard operating procedure manual. There'll be one for human resources, and there'll be one for the field, too, so our administrators and principals can review that. We're going to continue our targeted recruiting efforts for hard-to-fill or critical shortage areas. What that means is we may be advertising in particular at particular historically black colleges and universities, maybe some publications. Ones we're looking at currently are the Black Educators Association, the Association of Latino and Administrative Supervisors, and other areas that help us build our teacher and administrator ranks. Something that the district did in previous years, I think we'll bring this back, is a fall substitute and teaching assistant interview day. So basically on the spot, come on in, have a conversation, let's see if we can get you a new opportunity. Recruiting is half the battle. The next is retention. So we find these candidates, we need to keep them engaged. You know, bringing people to the Northeast is difficult. So we're looking to partner with organizations, whether that be with local credit unions, local community organizations, to kind of build that safety net, build that connection for people so they can come into a community and be connected. And last but not least is really tracking the effectiveness of these programs, looking at the metrics and reporting. And that's our presentation.
I would just like to take a moment and just commend Matt for number one, coming in and hitting the ground running and understanding why it is so important to have a diverse workforce. We are in a very diverse community, and embracing that and understanding that that is something that our children need to see people who look like them in leadership roles. And to know that that is a concerted effort is, I think that's to be commended, that he's come in such a short time and has embraced that portion of our vision. I do like the comprehensive view of not only looking at recruiting, but how do we engage people to a community where they're new so that they would want to stay here? And so there's not only the recruiting component, but that retention component and getting our newly employed folks connected to community events, people in the community, and helping them want to stay here. And so thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
It was a very nice presentation, thank you. One question that came to mind was, is there a referral program or process currently?
We don't currently have a referral program, but you know, I have seen those in the past, and it could be something that we could consider. Kind of where retention activities are kind of next after we shore up the recruiting activities, but it's on the table.
Dr. Chatur?
No questions. I just want to say great job. Thank you.
Ms. Lang?
I was wondering about the mobility of our teachers and not retaining them, but moving up if they wanted to get more education, to change jobs, or go up through that way.
Yeah, we actually post all positions internally first, give internal candidates an opportunity to apply. We have tuition reimbursement programs. We actually just recently launched an additional grant with the grants office for the Teachers of Tomorrow. So we try to give opportunities, whether it's for education, additional certifications. There's many opportunities for people to grow. Yeah.
Excuse me,
Roach.
I'd like to
Oops.
add to that, I'm sorry. We also have an Aspiring Leaders program, and that's not just for teacher leaders, not just for administrative leadership, but it's also for teacher leaders, because, you know, everyone may not choose to become an administrator, and that's fine because there are different roles of leadership, but we have a leadership academy where we look at people who are interested in those leadership roles versus both the teacher level as well as an administrative level.
Ms. Roach?
Thanks for the presentation. I'm excited about some of the new initiatives that we're going to be carrying out to get a stronger and more robust workforce. I just wanted to encourage, as you do go through your workflow looking for opportunities, that you pay special attention to turnaround time, and especially in terms of hiring people, hiring teachers before the beginning of the school year. Anecdotally, I've heard from people that have been, working in the district or are applying for jobs within the district, that the district has been in the past, before you came, a little late about getting back to people for interviews or getting back to people that had interviewed. And sometimes some of the good candidates went to other districts because, it was August 15th and they needed to get a job lined up. So whatever we can do in terms of streamlining our operations to make sure not only are we finding, interviewing, and extending job offers to the best candidates, we're doing it in time so they don't get taken away from somebody who is moving a little faster.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Smith?
Great. I think this was fantastic, and I hope that my question, actually, your response to Ms. Lang was very helpful, because I thought that what I might say was maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but I'll just. I'm just very excited about this. I think, one, I just want to say, and I think we all know what the research says about why it's so important to have a diverse workforce. I can tell you that my child probably had a handful of teachers, less than about 5, who were teachers of color through her experience here. And really about the same for me in the South, believe it or not, around integration. And despite the fact that my family they were all teachers, but everybody was kind of pushed into other things after integration. And so anyway, I just think it's very exciting, to have this. I was wondering if you are thinking about the homegrown aspect a bit more. I'm working with a couple of schools in my job where they're really struggling with trying to be responsive and have a more diverse workforce, and they're talking about things more on a community level, looking at people who can support to become teachers, who may be in nonprofit worlds, what have you, students, getting them ready at the middle school level to have an interest in teaching, supporting them throughout, et cetera. So just wondered if you've been able to look into that or talk about that. And then secondly, the other thing that I've noticed or that I think research says, is when we do this, there's a lot of support that's needed for teachers. And I think that's probably true in general with whomever is hiring. And I've seen a lot of districts sort of kind of develop their own in-house professional development. And maybe you're headed towards that, we're headed down that, I don't know, but just wanted to throw that out there too. And I'm sorry, they told me I had 2 things that I said.
Actually, we were counting 3.
Oh, okay, well, I won't say anything else the rest of the evening, okay? Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start with the homegrown. We do have the EMAT program with NYU, where we look at our employees who currently have a bachelor's degree, and we help them get the master's degree, and then we look at securing positions for them. We have had conversations with other colleges and universities in the area about our current support staff, and those things are in the planning stages because there are a few logistics that have to be worked out. So I'll give you the framework and the idea, but it is not finalized yet. But the idea that has been floated around to various universities in the area and colleges is that we look at our support staff, our internal folks who are TAs or even interested, if they're not a TA, they're interested in becoming teachers. What might those colleges and universities be able to do to support our current employees if they are interested in a bachelor's degree and getting a degree in education and going through that process? As you know, people are working, and part of the teaching curriculum, student teaching becomes a hurdle for people because typically you are unable to work at that time. And so determining what are those structures that are put into place to help our current employees maintain their day jobs and maybe look at student teaching a different way, but those things have not been worked out. So there have been conversations, there have been ideas floated around with colleges and universities in the area. We will look to see how we can texturize that and bring it to life so that we can start advertising to our own employees how to accomplish that goal. When you look at, you talked about middle school outreach and high school outreach. A few years ago, there was a teacher component to the high school. One of the conversations that I've had with Ms. Comerford is looking at how do we tap into those current students that we have who may be interested in teaching and seeing what that looks like. We don't have a teacher, quote, academy, but it doesn't mean that we can't build something where we identify students who are interested in teaching and then build something for them to support that interest. What that looks like, we don't know yet, but we have started a conversation with regard to that. The final piece that you talked about was professional development. Karen Bechtel has been very instrumental with the professional development that we have within our district, and there are a myriad of opportunities for current teachers to get involved with, also our administrators as well as support staff. And so we do already have our in-house professional development that offers just an array of opportunities for our faculty and staff.
Ms. Savage.
So I want to second the many thanks. In particular, I want to recognize the systematic approach that you're taking and the definition of some of the systems happening in HR. That is the kind of thing we're talking about and have been talking about on this board since I joined the board 3 years ago, about trying to systematize some of the things that we do in Albany so that we're not reinventing the wheel every day. So I thank you so much for that approach. I also wanted to second what Vicki said about how much we all recognize the value of a diverse workforce. I find the Johns Hopkins study incredibly compelling. They looked at 100,000 students and they found one black teacher reduced the impact of reduced dropping out, especially for very low income black boys, by almost 40%. One black teacher in elementary school, 40% reduction in dropout rate. That would change the world. So anything we can do to increase our diversity in our workforce is extremely welcomed by this board and begged for by this board for several years. And in particular, I want to echo the comments about local growth. I love the fresh blood that's in Albany. So many people come here and love being here. It is a wonderful place to live. And nonetheless, present company excluded. I do think in general it's easier to get somebody to stay here and love this place if they have family connections, if they have a reason for being here besides a single job, especially as a young person. To move for a job can be a very time-limited thing. So anything we can do to focus our efforts on building our local diverse workforce, I think will pay larger dividends. If I'm going to invest money in promoting diversity in workforce, I want to do it locally because I think it pays off better than trying to recruit people from the outside. Not that I don't want to see you going to historically black colleges and universities, because I do. I think that's a wonderful idea. But I think I want to see the biggest focus on what we can do locally, because I think we get the most bang for the buck. So that's not a question. Mostly it's just me being on a soapbox, but I appreciate the opportunity.
So I'll soapbox, but I'll change slightly. I actually, for a long time, even predating Ann's getting on the board, have talked about getting out to the historically black colleges and universities because of the importance of having people of color in the classroom as well to join our workforce now, with those who are here loving our students and teaching them beautifully as well. And so I applaud that, but what I like most about this, and everything that you talked about was great, 2018, and we're creating fillable PDFs. You know, we joke that thanks to Kent and thanks to your youth and what you're putting off now, we're now entering the 21st century, albeit 18 years later, but it sounds like a long time, but we are entering, you know, the 21st century in that way. But I do want to focus on that one piece. One of the things that's most important about bringing people to the city of Albany is, of course, getting a commitment from them for a number of years. So it's not just coming in and being here for a few months. The other is, of course, the importance of integrating people and putting the supports in place so that young people coming to the community to teach who are not from the area are involved in local churches and wraparound services and other professionals. To me, what I see about growth in the city, and I've said this before, is that it's a win-win for the city. There's not a large enough black professional class, middle class. There is one, but if we can both help our students by providing the role models that they can in the front of the classroom or in the middle of the classroom, since we don't want people standing up in the board and lecturing anymore, and we can also grow the city in ways that really shouldn't be on our shoulders to do, but we'll take it on if it serves our purposes and helps our students, then I think that that's a win-win. But it requires a follow-through, and it requires those supports going in place, because otherwise we bring people in and it can get lonely and it can be a new area, and if they don't know people, the proximity to other cities doesn't really help integrate people into the community. But I believe, just as we've welcomed you and you've seen the warmth of the city, that there's a way to do that. So I think it'd be great if we can do both at the same time, and you know, and each can bear fruit, and because people are retiring and we need to fill the positions, and the more we get people in front of our kids who truly love our kids, regardless of where they come from and what they look like, but truly love them for who they are and see them as all of them having the potential to succeed, the better off the district is going to be. So we'll go around for second rounds if people have. Ms. Wilson, Dr. Chator.
Two comments. It's great that you made the PDF files for the application. Make sure that they're responsive, because not all of the people who are applying would have access to computers. They might be trying to do it from their cell phones. It's tough to fill those. And also, with regards to that, I'd say, you know, maybe you should work with the libraries too, and try to publicize it, because people can go to the libraries, access those files through the thing. Related to going to the colleges, historically black colleges, and trying to recruit upcoming students as incoming teachers, especially in the sciences. Teaching is such a noble profession, but not everybody thinks that they want to be a teacher. There are other people, especially in the sciences, who want to do something else, and then somewhere on the line they get exposed to teaching and they find they are great teachers and they enjoy this, and they change paths. So when you're trying to target those students, also give them pathways that if they're interested in switching gears to becoming a teacher, what are the other things they would need to do? So they're not seeking that, right? So they're not looking for that. But if you show them that, that gets you more people. And this is true especially in the sciences. So.
just a quick response to that. We are looking at, as when we go to the universities, teams of administrators and even branching out, depending on when the fairs are held and what the funding would be, looking at teachers going out, because there's no one to sell the profession better than those people who, number one, need to hire for their own buildings and look for quality people, and also people who are in the profession and who really understand the value of reaching out to encourage people to become teachers. So those are the teams of people that we're looking at going out.
Ms. Lang.
I just want to say this was a great presentation, and everyone's questions and comments and soapboxes as well. Particularly about our city, I want to say thank you for that piece, because both of you live in our city, and these are our city, these are our children, these are our neighbors, and we want that workforce to be reflective of the children walking through our neighbors, how it impacts us, how it impacts our tax base. And so I thank you for adding that piece, because sometimes it's lost that we do live in a neighborhood, we do live in a community, and that's Albany. So thank you.
Well said, Ms. Lang. Ms. Roach?
No additional comments, thanks.
Ms. Smith?
Just one. Superintendent, I want to also direct this to Ms. Bechdel. I in no way, when mentioning professional development and some of the models that I'm reading about out here, I did not mean for that to be a reflection at all or judgment at all on what we do and how we do it. I just, I don't get to sit in all of that PD, but I just wanted to be able to say there's some things I was looking at and we may already be doing, I just may not know about it. But I did not at all mean to be critical of our staff, who I think are doing a fabulous job. So thank you.
Ms. Savage? So the only thing I was going to just add, and I know it's been tossed around for many, many years, which is it would be really wonderful if in some way, and I know we don't have the money to do it now, but the concept of incentivizing, and I know you've talked about it in a non-monetary way, other ways of doing it, Superintendent, but incentivizing having our teaching force, certainly the new hires, starting with that, living in the city. I understand that, and this is no disrespect to teachers who love our children, who see the sky's the limit for them, but don't live in the city. But there's a reason we talk about neighborhood policing. There's a reason we talk about people living in the city. There is and Ms. Lang spoke about it, like I said, beautifully, but and we've all talked about it on this board. There is something that, whether it happens intentionally or unintentionally, that when you live in the city and you're invested in it, you believe in the people around you, and you believe in the worth of those who inhabit the same space as you. So that's an impassioned plea. I know I'm not the only one to, in some way, figure out a way to see if that's something that can be factored in some way. Ms. Savage, did you have something you wanted to? Oh, I thought you're preparing for the next. Well, thank you so much. We're done.
Okay.
The faces. So, Ms. Savage, we are up to you and our policy discussion.
I hope this will be the shortest ever policy conversation. We are going to take a vote today on policy 2220, which is board officers. We have changed a grand total of 2 letters and 1 word in this policy to capitalize annual organization meeting and replace January with July. So I'm going to ask that the president entertain a motion to pass this.
I would like to, so I may get a motion. Ms. Wilson, a motion to adopt this. Ms. Smith, seconded. All those in favor? And that is the fastest, I think. If not, you have a time to beat, Ms. Savage, the next go-round. And we are now up to the academic report.
Good evening. So this is our mid-year academic report. where we take you through our K through 12 data at this point in the school year, really based on assessments that have been conducted during the month of January and the very beginning of February that we then compile the results of. So just to give context to the data before we look at it, our elementary schools are in their second year of adopting new resources in math and ELA. Last year, K through 2 received the ELA resources. This year, they received math resources. Last year, 3 through 5 received math resources, and this year they received ELA resources. We focused on a strong foundational skills to begin to fill gaps that we feel that have occurred over the course of curriculum changing over the last few years, and a very strong focus at K2 in particular, by restructuring our reading approach to do what we call the double dose model, where we put a lot of additional resources into K2 with reading teachers, literacy coaches, and differentiated instruction teaching assistants. At the middle school, they continue to implement a consistent curriculum that is standards driven and developed with the cooperation of teachers. They also, as at the elementary level, are working at data driven instruction through their data teaming and common planning time. They also are working with instructional support with their coaches, supervisors, and principals. And high school, we should have just had Jody sit up here with us and give her section of the report, because much of it is a similar data that will be shared this evening, in addition to their receivership metrics. We do emphasize for ourselves, for the board and the public, that this is a mid-year pulse check. This is not by any means the end of the movie. It's what allows us to do our mid-course corrections, as we like to call them, by looking at our data and see what we need to do differently between now and the close of the school year. So every year we explain the difference between the New York State assessment and where that is rated at, and the NWA MAP assessment. The NWA MAP assessment is administered 3 times a year. It's a computer-based assessment, and we like to make it clear that for kindergarten through 2nd grade, the students listen to the assessment. And that shift occurs in 3rd grade, where they are now responsible for reading it themselves and answering the questions on their own. It is a great benchmarking assessment. It gives us an overview and a picture of how our students are performing, but it's we measure it at the 50th percentile. When we shifted to the Common Core Learning Standards, New York State shifted their assessment to assess at the 70th percentile. So when we look at our NWA data, we look at it that only of our students that we identify as above are students that are really working towards the 70th percentile and are fully prepared to be successful or proficient on the New York State assessment. So what we do each year is we take our fall data and compare it to our winter data in both reading and ELA at both the elementary and middle level. And every year, our results are about the same, where we see students start off more significantly in the far below and below columns, and then the winter we see a nice shift to the at and above columns, and that's no different this year generally. And so you'll see that progress where most of our students have moved a column or 2 from the far below to the at and above. We remind you that when you see the red, the number of students and below, that is a result of students who have moved from far below. It's not necessarily a sign of regression of students who were at and above. Same thing with math. Our progress has been similar. And as you note, kindergarten through 2nd grade tend to have stronger performance numbers at or above. And again, kindergarten through 2nd grade, the assessment is read to them. And pretty consistently, there aren't significant difference between our math and our ELA results on the NWA assessments. They're performing fairly similarly at the at or above level. The other data that we share publicly is the conditional growth percentile data from the NWA assessment. And that data basically translate loosely into, if you achieve at the 50th percentile, then students are achieving for a year's worth of growth, which is what we would expect every child to do. We've had lengthy conversations about the fact that in order for our students to make the progress that we need them to see, 50th percentile is not going to be sufficient. And unfortunately this year, we still are not seeing what we want to see in terms of grade levels performing at the 50th percentile. We still hover in the low 40s overall as a district, and then if you go from building to building where you do see children performing at the 50th percentile or better, it's primarily in the K through 2 grades. You have a few schools where 4th and 5th grade is performing at that level. We did have highlights, however, and we do try to look for those spots in buildings, where we had 7 out of 12 elementary buildings meet their experience growth, particularly in K2. So we continue to think that the resources that we're putting in place are benefiting them, but as we've discussed in the budget conversation, we want to make sure that we have sustained, continued growth in there before we continue to add to that particular model. We have 3 out of 7 buildings who had 2 or more grade levels achieve more than 4% change. Ash, which there's a lot of backstory to this, but experienced significant growth in grade 1. There were some staffing changes that also have impacted that significant growth in the 20% change. So this was interesting data for us to consider. NWA, Giffen, and New Scotland experienced more than 10% change in 1 grade level. But you'll remember possibly me sitting at this table discussing the significant growth that Arbor Hill and Sheridan Prep experienced last year in their NWA scores that we did not see this year. And we were like, you know, what was the difference? We began to compare, did the students enter the same? Did they enter lower? Did they have more to grow? And began to ask some questions and have conversations with our principals about that data. But then when you go to look at the Ames Web data, and the Ames Web assessment is an assessment that is administered individually to students and is really about the foundational skills. And it measures students' ability to read accurately and to read fluently, because that impacts your ability to comprehend. And so what we see at Arbor Hill and Sheridan Prep is that their Ames Web is significant. So the line that we're drawing is they're building the foundational skills that are necessary to apply to their NWA assessments. So we may not see that growth just yet, but our expectation is the application skills will grow as well, and they will be significantly different in the spring. And I know that's the expectation of the principals as well as they look through that data. We've done a lot of work with this data with principals because we got the extra 2 weeks before we had to present it to the board, which was really nice, to begin having some conversations with them about what their data is saying to them. And I think the most telling thing at the elementary level is looking at consistent results over time. And what we're not seeing is consistent results over time with the majority of our classrooms. And how do we begin to build that consistency so that it's not the same 3 teachers who achieve good results every year and the same 3 teachers who receive not so good results and everybody else is somewhere in the middle. As long as the majority of teachers are somewhere in the middle, we're not going to be able to move the needle in a consistent manner in order for us to see more than a year's worth of growth. Action steps. So this is the mid-course correction piece, but we started a lot of this work in the fall. We launched data teaming once again with our principals and our instructional coaches so that our teachers are diving deeply into data 3 weeks out of the month during their common planning time and using that to determine what strength our students have, what areas they need to develop, and to adjust their instruction accordingly. When you look at the SEP quarterly report information that we provide to you, you'll see a lot of the grade level team data where teams are making significant progress on focus standards as they work through them through individual units, and that's the result of the data teaming work. We have our instructional coaches. Our ELA coaches are in the building all day teaching half-time, but the rest of their time is to be providing coaching cycles and modeling and demonstrating lessons to help build the capacity of teachers to deliver instruction more effectively. We are in the process of developing a training for our teaching assistants, and this is linked to the roles and responsibilities in the K2 classrooms. Again, as we continue to put more adults and resources into those classrooms, we want to make sure they're used in a consistent manner and that every adult has a specified role that they're playing to support instruction that will actually move progress in the classroom. Our reading teachers and coaches have been working with Dr. Lori Strong for the last 2 years on delivering more effective instruction. We really need to get professional development down to our individual teacher level, and that's really our next step, which is built into our budget plan for this year. Our after-school tutoring this year is embedded a solid academic component using an iRead online software that tracks students' data where they are and then provides lessons and instruction to support that. That's also seen in the classroom during center time. And we are continuing the work of implementing our new curriculum resources.
So we'll move to middle and high school. As the elementary, we have the NWEA data up there measured with the far below, below, at, and above categories. The percent change document is actually easier to see, pulled from that prior chart. So we are bringing the far belows, we're getting better there, and bringing the aboves up, not to the degree that we would like to see, but there is positive change. This is for reading. And then the math, similarly, here's sort of the hard data, and then the percent change data where the far below is going down, and we are moving more kids into the at and above categories. That was quick. All right. So right to the middle school highlights. This data is at that 30,000 foot, so to speak, when we're speaking about the district-wide data of all of our children at the middle level in this particular case. It's better when we look at the building level where we can actually see impact at particular buildings. Hackett continues to really do such a great job in terms of meeting the expected growth at all grade levels and in both content areas. So they are doing the year for a year at that at the middle level at Hackett. They're exceeding that 50th percent for growth in all grades for literacy and grade 8 for math. So they continue to be knocking it out of the park, in my opinion, at Hackett in terms of the growth and the expected growth. Myers, just a highlight, meeting expected growth in grades 6 and 7 for literacy and grades 6 and 8 for math, and then exceeding the 50th percentile for growth in grade 6 literacy. Those are some specific gains in specific grade levels there. And O'Neill, meeting expected growth for literacy in grades 6 and 7 and for math in grade 8. As in elementary, middle school, the data team meetings take place once or twice a week. Middle school is nice because there is that daily team meeting structure. So we have a built-in platform where teachers can meet. They work with the instructional coaches, push in to lead those that data work, lead the data analysis, work through the coaching cycles, and provide the modeling. After-school tutoring is also in place at the middle school. And we are in the process of math program review to inform next steps for our math instruction. For the high school, Jody Comerford actually gave you a lot of the data that I'm going to have here as well, but I will go over it one more time. And that is the first, I think I have a little more detailed information about the Albany High School freshman metric. The research shows that when ninth graders end the year having achieved 5 credits, they are far more likely to graduate from high school. So the receivership metrics give us a progress target of at 67% and a goal target of 77%, and they're measuring those in terms of how they're deciding how we did with both of those levels. We are currently at 71%, so we've already met the progress target and am working towards the goal target. And this is at the mid-year point with 4 or 5 months left. We know that there are 186 students who are not on track, and so we know the names of those students, and we have the interventions in place. Jody spoke about the action plans, and this is serious work with the data to ensure that we do everything that we can to get those students over that 5 credit mark. We cannot speak, I know that we had said this was about Regents exams, but the Regents exams are still, the scores are embargoed, so we can't speak too publicly about them, but I can give you some information about them at this time. And once those are released, we will be sending those results in the update. Another thing to keep in mind about the January Regents is that in almost all cases, I can't think of any case, a student is taking this exam because they failed it before. There may be some cases where a student is trying to improve a score, an already passing score, that occurs as well. but by and large, these are children who are students who have not made it and are there and ready to go. So we've gave this exam, I think that adds up to between 900, around 900 students in January. Those are the 5 gateway courses. And that's how many we tested in those. And as you know, the gateway courses required for diploma. I can talk a little bit about trends. We had upward trends, and again, when we think about trends in the January regions, it's a little tricky, but still we looked for those. We had upward trends in Algebra 1, Geo, Global, Living Environment, Chem, Earth Science, and U.S. History. A downward trend in Algebra 2 and ELA, but I think I can tell you, hopefully I'm not stepping over the line here, that the ELA was a very slight decline, and we, 2 years ago, we had more than doubled the score, so it is not any kind of a horrendous difference. And then also, I would say the same for Algebra 2. We're in year 2 of the Algebra 2 Common Core exam, and while it did go down from last year, it did not go down in any amount where we feel, nervous. And again, because it's a January test, it will vary from year to year. It's really when we give you the report in September, where you can see the whole year cycle of January exams, that you get a sense of how we're doing on those. This data is about what students still need, what seniors in the 2014 cohort that still need the number of exams. So we have 10 students that need 5 tests. That's a tough one. But those kids that need the 1, 2, and 3 tests, we can get them through. We know who those students are. As Jody said, the action plans are in place, and we are working towards getting there. Jody mentioned the RTI and our progress monitoring, using the data dashboard to identify students at risk, trying to do the small group tutoring, Regents review, which we always do, but we're really targeting those students. We have the appeals process for Regents, which we take advantage of, and the mentors for identified seniors, which is helping us reach the target that we're trying to get to. Yeah, I could, yeah. So today we sat in the school improvement team meeting at Albany High, and Debbie Sharp, our special education director, revealed that the CDOS regulations for this year only have changed around the hours that they're requiring for students. And we believe that we may have about 40 kids that may be eligible in that pathway. So that could, I don't know what we're saying in a public setting, but we said it in the SIT meeting today. This is the information Debbie brought. We've got to do the work to see who those kids are. And because they could be in different cohorts. They might not all be sitting in the 2014. They could be over time. But regardless, that is a significant number of students that would be able to impact our data. So we're pretty excited about that. I'll end on that nice positive note and go to questions.
I'll start over on this side, Ms. Roach.
No questions right now. I'll catch me on the second round.
Ms. Lang.
So it's budget time, and we've spoken about the budget and the academic plan. Going through these numbers now and dissecting them, are there anything in the academic plan or the budget that you would like to focus on more or talk about, or?
I mean, for the elementary, I think I emphasized it in the budget presentation. The PD that we want to do is critical, and getting the math coaches to a point where they're at least only split between 2 buildings is critical. Adding additional resources other than that, we're not comfortable with at this point in time, and we've had that conversation with principals, and their budget asks reflect that they want time to figure out how to use the resources they have them in the most efficient way before they ask for more in that particular vein.
And I would like to actually add to that too, that we talked about the differentiated instruction TAs that we have. We are seeking to have a little more training for them. But in addition, one of the things that we noted, and there's these mid-course corrections in our plan, is about they don't have time to plan. So, and they work with 6 teachers often, 4 to 6 teachers. So what we, Cecily and I discussed, actually it was Cecily's idea because she's so brilliant, is to have the DITAs actually have a planning session each week with the coach. And this is actually happening in Pine Hills, and it's successful. So this is a good mid-course correction that we can make to improve what it is that we're doing and really fine-tune those roles and responsibilities.
Karen, DITA, so TA is TA, DI is?
Differentiated
instruction teaching assistant.
The TAs that we asked for as a part of the academic plan last year to provide assistance to
You're
the centers.
not allowed to add acronyms until you actually
I
log them
explained.
into the acronym,
Did I say
you know.
I think I said it.
Probably did. Anyway, Dr. Chatoor.
It's a two-part question. I ask this question every year, and I'm still confused. First question. So when the numbers go down from fall to winter, could it be attributed to getting into more complex material? Like when you start in fall, the curriculum is not as tough as spring. That's one.
NWEA is a normed test, and there are hundreds of thousands of students that are in that pool that we're being compared against, so no.
So having now that I know that,
and we didn't go down, we went
the
up.
second part is when you look at the difference in across the schools. I mean, there are schools that aren't meeting the expectation going from fall to spring. We know that we were doing progress with the second years, the second graders, third graders in elementary school, for example, right? In ELA. So that we can make our third graders can read. So now when those third graders go to the fourth grade, does that make that change? I mean, do you track it across cohorts? And are you seeing progress or it's not an easy
No, it's
right.
so what we talk about. I mean, our term that we used with the principals last year is looking at the data horizontally and vertically. When you're looking horizontally, you're looking a different group of kids. When you're looking vertically, you're looking across to see how did these children travel through our system and are we having impact. And again, it goes back to the point I made earlier. It varies. And so what we were hoping to see was as strong results in kindergarten as we saw with last year's kindergarten at this time of year. And we're not way off, not by any stretch of the imagination, but our intent is to get better every year, not to just maintain. What we did see, however, is that our kindergarten cohorts, for the most part, when you look at them now as first graders, have maintained or done better. But we want to make sure it's not just that particular cohort of kindergartners. We want to make sure it's the actual programming and structures that we're putting in place that are impacting these students' growth.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you once again. Now, with respect to the elementary students, it's more so, my question goes back to that those are the skill sets that are foundational for their academic career, and start strong, end strong. And I heard you state, so my question isn't so much, I don't want to repeat the same question over and over, but I heard you state that you want to ensure that these are sort of baseline activities that can be repeatable in all classes. So, I know you stated you the data teams meet. So when a school is demonstrating growth, like the ones you've outlined, are they trying to transfer those skill sets also to other schools and other teams?
So every school is doing data teaming in some way, shape, or form. We've done a lot of work over the last year and a half to get into a very consistent place as to how everyone does data teaming. So there is a district protocol and there's a district template as to how data teaming works. And we made a concerted effort this year to place our instructional coaches, math, ELA, and data coaches to facilitate the data teaming process to ensure that consistency. And so in most of our buildings, it's occurring at every grade level with some level of facilitation. And I can say 90% or better of our buildings who are doing the data teaming are seeing the direct impact on the data that they are working on. So that is fairly consistent. What we're trying to triangulate is the work that they're doing in data teams where they're seeing growth on those particular standards. Is that going to then play out in their NWA assessment and then play out again in their New York State assessment? Because it should. If we're seeing increase in the unit assessments and the pre and post tests that we're using at the formative level, then we should see that growth in each assessment that we do. It should triangulate.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Savage.
One of the things that I noticed when I looked at the data that I'm hoping you can help me understand, or at least guess about what's going on, is that we, over the last 2 budgets, have put a significant emphasis on pre-K through 2, or K through 2 literacy. But when I looked at the district-wide numbers comparing K to 2 literacy versus K to 2 math, the math went up substantially, and the literacy just at K2 was either flat, up a little, or in fact, for second grade, down a little bit. So I was really surprised by that, because we're putting a bunch of money in literacy, but I'm seeing improvements in math, and I'm not getting, I'm hearing you say over and over again, we need to add more on math, and I believe that. I just don't understand how I get to that from this particular piece of the data.
So, and I'll let Karen speak to this as well, but what I will say, like you said, I'm hypothesizing, but what I have found in many, particularly in our kindergarten classrooms, is when teachers are pre-testing them in particular skills, our kindergartners actually have some math strengths according to the standards that they're supposed to be focusing on right now. So their number sense is what basically is the focus of K through 2, is able to be strengthened very quickly, it appears, and it's aided by their ability to read better also, we believe. So they're just listening, like I said, to the NWA assessment, and then able to do the number sense things that they're being requested to do. So for example, when we started data teaming at one of our buildings, they did the pre-test and the students were already 81% proficient in the skill that they were about to teach. So that tells them that they can start somewhere else in the instruction for math, versus when the kids are entering 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and they didn't have the foundational skills taught K2, we're seeing a huge gap, which is why we know we need the math coach support to begin to build the instruction for our intermediate grades and to sustain what we're beginning to see K2 with our new resource.
And then I would also like to add that keep in mind that we put the K2 math resources in place this year. And remember, K2 is a fast-moving place. And to have those resources there, available, ready to go, provides some fluidity to the instruction to get kids in the centers and in direct instruction, moving more quickly through the material when prior to this, it was compiling those materials was more of a challenge.
Didn't we also, and I'm sorry, this is really a follow-up part of the same question, didn't we also have an ELA resource, though? I'm still trying to struggle with why is math getting higher faster than ELA when we've put ELA resources, not, I don't mean Karen's resources, I mean human resources.
And what I will also say that I've learned just this year in particular and being in our school reviews is the math resource is a very different experience than our reading resource. The math resources is found to be much more straightforward and easier to use, whereas our reading resource is very, very extensive in a good way, but in a way where teachers need to be able to learn and go deeper into that particular resource. But our students in some buildings versus other, we even saw it last year before we even put the resources in the building, some buildings performed better generally in math. A lot of our what we would call, our downtown schools had really good New York State math results when our uptown schools didn't, and they all got the curriculum resource 3 through 5. So I think when we look at how our students are coming in with those particular math skills that are assessed at that time K2, they're performing stronger there. I mean, overall, when we look at the district, it evens out, but if you break it out by school, you can see the difference.
So I'll ask the first of my first of my 3 questions is actually a comment. So thank you. My problem just conceptually with getting the academic presentations over the last many years is that we continue in the prosaic presentation, as opposed to the one that just gives the scores, to talk a lot about growth. And I appreciate your talking about how we've talked about it over the years, and the fact that I know that you guys are not satisfied. I'm not suggesting for a moment that you're sitting here complacent or satisfied with 1 year, for actual growth. But what I'd like to share, because, about this, is that I don't believe it helps us as a board or as a district to discuss growth when we're reporting out scores. I don't believe it helps us from the concept of the rigor that we expect from teachers, from students, from curriculum. I believe that if we talk about proficiency only, and then you can always have an aside later on about growth or have some other chart or description, that's great. But to not have the language be 90%, and it could be 80, could be 75, could be 92, to not have the language in the discussion use proficiency as the standard, proficiency as the language, does a number of things. Number one, I believe it exposes us to trying to, and I know we're not doing it, but exposes us to criticism that there is complacency because we're talking about growth again. Look, we did growth, we grow. That's not an acceptable thing, and I've been saying it, as you know, for the first half year I was learning, so the last 6 years. So that's one reason.
So can I just?
Oh, of course.
So we need to talk about both. We don't need to talk about one in isolation of the other. One, and this is probably the last reason, but I'll start with it, is because the new regulations under Every Student Succeeds Act is going to measure not just performance, but our ability to grow students, because the measure is not sensitive enough to capture what we're going to do in a year's worth of time with the students. So we have to be able to look at growth. I do not in any way, shape, or form disagree with you that we also have to look at proficiency, but our growth tells a story. If we're not growing them, the proficiency is not changing. And so when we look at our our NWA data and we see schools and grade levels at the 48th percentile and the 42nd percentile, I don't need to look at the at and above data to know that it looks exactly the same as it has for the last 2 years, because we're not growing our children any faster in any given year. So the only way our proficiency grows up is if we actually do the growth that needs to occur for our students. I said to Ken Robin, I said, Ken, why can't I go out and say, every school has to be at the 80th percentile. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about anything else before those kids leave kindergarten, because if we can do that, then I know we're going to be fine. He says you can, but you're not going to see that until you actually see the growth in those students in a year's worth of time. And so the conversation we've been having with teachers is, when we talk about urgency and we talk about how students have to move, you have to be able to grow students more than 50, more than 60, really 70th percentile in order for us to see any movement in the score percentiles and actual proficiency of our students. And every year, we are producing the same or similar results. Our movement is minuscule. It's, we're not, thank God, going, 10 steps back, but we're not moving 10 steps forward in a year either. And so we have to have both, because if we don't have growth, we don't have the motivation for our students to say, I move from this RIP band to this RIP band, and that's my growth target for the school year, which is what a lot of schools do and work on with students, to get to that proficiency. But we cannot, and I agree with you, simply talk about growth. It is both pieces that are going to move the district forward.
Madam President, if I may. Thank you, Dr. Wilson-Turner. I wanted to add to that. One of the ways to look at it is when you think about formative assessment versus summative assessment. If you are assessing your students, and I'll use a college example, those of us who have been to classes where you had a midterm and a final, and your grade or quote proficiency was based on only those two measures, what was it going to take for you to get to that proficiency was many times missed because there was no formative assessment. So when we think of growth, we can think of it in terms of these are the formative things that we're doing. Even though we measure it and capture it here, growth becomes those formative measures that we do, that temperature check to say, if this is the standard, how close are you, how far are you, and then what are those discrete things that we need to do in order to get you here with growth, point A, so that at the end of the day, that summative piece, that proficiency piece, we're on track. And so I do support the argument that we need to look at both. We need to value both because they work in concert with each other, and it's not an either or. I understand that at the end of the day, it is about proficiency, but in order to see that target at the end of the day, I go back to the example of if you have a class and you only have a final exam, and you do not know the things from point A to get to that final exam, which is point B, you're shooting in the dark. And so that's one of the ways that we look at growth as well as proficiency. I don't even say versus, I say growth as well as proficiency.
So my problem or my concern or criticism is that it feels like when I read the report, because we had two of them, the prosaic one and then the numbers, that we were again talking about a kind of growth that isn't the growth that's going to move the needle at all for proficiency, because it's not 1 year for 1 year sometimes, and even if it is, we're talking about the K2 improvement and then that significant drop off. And I'll wait for my next round for the question is about middle school, because for me, the what I'm seeing when I'm looking out is that, and I'm some overlapping into a two-parter than like Dr. Chator, so, which is that for me, it must mean, therefore, for us to get the increased graduation rate in all subgroups, except I think it was not economically disadvantaged, it was like a weird subgroup that was the same, then that means that the high school's doing an even more extraordinary job than I ever thought, because we have such drop-off and such bad numbers in middle school that the high school has been able to take algebra and thanks to just some real targeted work when kids coming in the math have been able to jump it. So in any event, I think there's a lot to unpack, but for me, I do have that reaction when I see the discussion about growth, because it's almost like a salvo, not a salvo, but it doesn't tell the whole story and it's not significant enough growth. So I don't believe, I mean, for us it's fine, but not really for having maybe the kind of conversation that really needs to, which is, how do we move off of this place? But in any event, I will go back to Ms. Roach now.
Thank you. I have one very minor question about one of the slides and then a more conceptual big picture question. The minor question is on slide 9, which is the K2 literacy initiative. I was wondering about the second bullet point where you said 3 out of 7 buildings have 2 or more grade levels. I was confused because first you said 7 out of 12 elementary buildings, so I wasn't sure what the 3 out of 7 was.
Out of the 7 elementary buildings that experience growth, 3 of them
okay.
experience growth at 2 grade levels.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
That should have been maybe
Nope.
obvious, but it was not obvious to me. The second one was, speaking more broadly, when I looked at those elementary school levels, and I see especially with the little kids, year after year, they come in far below, and by the middle of the year or the end of the year, they're really making an enormous amount of growth. What I see is that summer regression, and I know thinking broadly, what can we do? I know a couple of years ago when we tried that sort of enrichment summer program, that was not very successful, but I'm wondering what we can do in the summer for these kids that may not have super, they may not be in the most enriching or educational environments during the summer, and they're losing a lot of the skills that we've been able to help them grow over the school year. And I'm wondering, is it year-round schooling? Is it parent universities held during the summer? Is it sending kids home with books over the summer? I don't know what the answer is, but I'm wondering what there is that we can do during the months that the kids are not in school now to help kind of prevent some of that regression, because it seems if we could just bring in the kids in September where they were in June, the growth is hard enough without having to combat that regression.
I can't give you an answer to that. I mean, if we could, we'd all make a lot of money, right?
No, it was just.
But what I will say, I mean, you're absolutely right. So Melissa Hasty does her Jumpstart Pre-K program, and so because we have so many students who are now participating, we're now taking our our pre-K kiddos and just getting them ready for kindergarten. And she has the luxury of doing the latter half of the summer, which I'd love to do for elementary summer school, but Bill will kill me because we have to clean buildings. But even in that short amount of time, you know, not starting until the end of July, they see the regression from June to when they take them in at the last week of July to do the work of summer. And so, you know, that summer slide is very, very real. And it takes our students a little bit of time to get back into the swing of things when they get here in September. And so we are starting down. And so the conversations we have with teachers is that's all the more reason why that we need them to leave you far ahead of where they need to be for the next school year. So when kindergarten classrooms were saying, oh, our students are already proficient at this skill, great. Can you teach them the next skill so that when they go next year, they're a little bit ahead and begin to make up for that loss? And that we know that all that we do in summer school is maintain. We'd love to say that in 5 weeks we make a miracle happen and grow them. We know that doesn't happen. We try to sustain what we've taught them throughout the course of the school year, but then they're still away from us for 4 weeks before school starts.
Ms. Lang.
The schools where there's the top school, the lowest school, do you see a big difference in why there's a difference? I know that most of the schools, when you go through the individual schools, are similar, and they're not that much bigger. So we're not having 90 to 10, kind of, at least the numbers that I've seen. But what is that? Those small increments where they are doing? Are they different buildings? Is there a different feel? Is there a different walk-in? Is there?
There's no building where instruction is happening so consistently that I can say that building does something completely different than that building is doing. What you'll see is those pockets of high-performing teachers or classrooms that bring up particular grade levels, that bring up the overall performance of that particular building, and that's pretty much what it is. We took the principals through their Ames web data at the principals meeting, and just literally, for the last 3 years, how did this teacher perform? And on your hands, you could count the teachers who consistently had exceptional results, consistently had poor results, and then everywhere else, it depends on the year. We're not consistent in our instructional model anywhere enough to say that one school is doing something so much better than the other. There are grade levels, there are individual teachers, but we're not there yet, and we have to get there. Like I said before, we will not see a concerted growth in our student performance until we do.
Dr. Chator.
I needed to read some tea leaves. How long would it take for us to get there?
So
If I could interject.
Change.
Change takes time.
Change takes time. You know, you could ask different people. They would say 5 to 7 years. But here's what I'm going to say. In that 5 to 7 years, nothing else can change. And so what we have not done an exceptional job of in this district is remaining consistent in something, staff, programming, standards, you name it, for more than a year or two at a time. So our staff is like this, because they don't know where to look, where to turn, and what's coming next that's going to be new. So if we could just, and I think I said this last year in our spring report, just stick with something, build it till it's proficient, then we can talk about what the impact is. Karen's really good at rubbing my back, and after we look at the data and saying, Sess, we've only been at this 18 months. Like 18 months, we've put this new, the new curriculum resources in place. We've put the K2 model in place. We have to give things time to settle and be tweaked, and make sure that we're actually doing what we said we were going to do. And that's been a lot of our conversation in the mid-course correction work with the principals. When we go into classrooms, and we've done a lot of walkthroughs both at the district and principal level this year to say, oh, we say this is how we're delivering instruction, but is that how everyone is delivering instruction? We say that this is the model, but is that really the model that we're actually seeing? And if it's not, what tweaks do we need to make sure it's there? So it takes time, but it also takes us being consistent with something long enough to see some results.
So if I may, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Chator, one of the things that we are doing, we have an instructional framework that we have been doing that work, and it's not new. It's just solidifying what our schools are doing that's working and making sure that we stand behind that. Schools, in doing their school improvement plans, they're not being encouraged to reinvent the wheel. They're being encouraged to focus on those things that are being done well and to maximize that. And also, if there are things that are not, cut bait and go. Those are things that they're being encouraged to do as they're looking at their plans and doing their mid-course corrections and moving forward. Are there changes just because of staffing, et cetera, and some of those forces that we might not be able to control? Yes. But we're also trying to make sure that those things that we can control are consistent.
Thank you. In fact, in recent years, we've used this data-driven approach and having those systems in place. I think that's going to help us make that jump. That it probably wouldn't take us 5 to 7 years because you have an instant reflection of how you're performing by looking at your data. So you can make those mid-course corrections.
And grow the capacity of everyone to do that work. And that's a pretty good lift. And we have to give that time. It is the right work.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson.
So earlier, when we were talking about the progress versus, evaluating in another way, and I don't know if you spoke to this, but I foresaw when you guys were mentioning progress on the sets of data you gave us, is that it was also a reflexive metric also. So not only is it measuring the student progress, but it's sort of measuring what's effective or ineffective. So I don't know if you spoke to that, but I kind of gathered that, so I wanted to add that to that conversation also. And another point, which I'm not certain if you spoke about, I may have missed it when in response to Jen. I'm trying to remember. Okay, I'll come back to that. But also, Ellen said something that was on my mind also about the summer slide you referred to. And I wasn't necessarily thinking of summer, but I was also just thinking about, in contrast with the fact that children have increased screen time at a younger age, there's a reduced public funding for educational supportive materials on TV and things of that nature. So I think it's just a climate that we're working within also. And I wish I could remember the thing I wanted to ask you. I'm so sorry.
Ms. Smith.
I wanted to, I hear what you've just said, and all of you, but there's a phrase that is bothering me, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding it in context. It's on page 5 of the mid-year report, and it's where, it's under the conditional growth percentile data, and in the middle of the paragraph, it reads, "The charts so far in this report represent achievement and percent change, but not necessarily student growth." And it just sort of confused me right there, and I want to make sure I understand.
So it's just distinguishing between these are actual performance levels versus versus actual growth levels. So this is 17.9.5% of our kindergartners in math in the winter are at proficiency according to NWA. That's actual performance. It's not about whether they made their growth targets. It's they're at, at grade level or at the 50th percentile. To Sue's point, in terms of not just talking about growth in isolation, but actually showing how they're actually performing. And so the other reports that you have, I believe in your administrative content, is the score percentiles for each schools, and that's the actual performance and how our students compare to other students across the district or across the country.
Ms. Savage. So my next question has to do with, can you help me understand the middle school data and the fact that over the last 6 years, our graduation rate has gone in my time from like 49% to at least the mid-60s if you're just looking, at the 4-year rates. So, and our middle school data is, it's not a criticism of you, is abysmal.
It is what it is.
So it's not taking away from getting off receivership, and it's not taking away from growth, and that's where the growth proficiency conversation for me is. And again, my concern is it's sort of like, and why I talk about it is not that I don't understand that growth and proficiency both play a role, but sometimes I just think that if we talk about one a little more than the other, which sometimes it feels like the reports do, that we kind of lose sight of the sort of stark nature of where we are, notwithstanding that I fully appreciate and respect and agree with what you both just said about holding the line, and the fact that it is only 18 months, and the fact that in those 18 months, having the history of being on the board, I know when we didn't have plans, and we didn't have coherency, and we didn't have systems, and we didn't have curriculum for years. So I know that. It's just I kind of want the reports to be, for me, it's only personal. Nobody else might think that way. I like them to be just lately a little less, they're not, I mean, not 1984ish, but a little in an era when right now sometimes people don't, not us here, but people don't always speak in the most, with the most clarity and honesty, is I want to make sure, I guess I'll phrase it this way, that when everyone's out in the buildings and the principals are talking to their teachers and everybody's talking about the reality, that we are supporting our teachers but not sugarcoating the work. So that we're supporting them, but what we're saying is we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And don't get complacent, because you can say, I got growth. That isn't the mark. So that's sort of maybe a little more clear for me. So I just wanted to explain that. So if you could help me on this middle school, high school, how are we doing so much better at the high school level? And how does it look like the numbers at middle school would have us regressing or staying flat?
So, no, it's really not, because actually this is historically how it's been since these 3 through 8 tests have come into play. Is that the proficiency level, the marks that they're at, they tend to indicate that students won't do to this degree in the high school. Like this looks, well, they're at 50%. Why aren't we still at the 50% for high school graduation? The Regents exams are just different. They've always been different. They're a different measure. They're a different. They're far more targeted and specific. And it has traditionally been across the state that high schools will get the results that they want from their Regents exams, and maybe not. You won't see those same correlating results in the 3 through 8 tests. I think that is, and maybe could substantiate that, but that, to my experience, has been the way that it is.
Having been at both elementary and high school, there is a difference between what you measure and what is essential to the completion of high school versus what you measure and what's essential to the completion of elementary school. And that was a shift that I had to understand when I got there. The high school is about, do the students pass the course, and did they pass the Regents exams, which have not changed dramatically in terms of how they're scored, in terms of what the cut scores are, in terms of what your proficiency has to be to pass them, probably since I took them in 1995. Whereas, as when I was an elementary principal, the shift from the ELA assessments based on the 2005 standards to the 70th percentile for the Common Core Learning Standards is significant. And the rollout of it, everything about what we've done has created these gaps that we are now responsible for filling for our children that are having impact up through middle school. And so yes, our high school is still having to do a Herculean job to make sure our students are prepared and can pass those tests and complete their coursework, but the work, I would say, is different in terms of how they're being assessed. They're not taking norm referenced assessments that are basically normed here at the elementary level and here at the high school level, because you can get out of high school with a 65, or I'm sorry, the appeals process, less than that, on the Regents exam. There's none of that at the elementary level. So it's not necessarily comparing apples to apples when you're talking about K-8 in high school.
Thank you. Ms. Roach.
No additional questions. Thank you.
Ms. Lang. Dr. Chator.
Staying in middle schools, if we had to make, we talked about Hackett being great, how do we make O'Neill and Myers just as great? Is it just the money? I mean, because Hackett became a focus school, got the $2 million, the resources.
It is a lot about systems. It's a lot about the stability of the leader. Mike Polino's been in place 8 years, I believe. He has got that school down. He has all the right things in place. The teaming, the data teaming. He's got the right. He's strived to really get the right staff in there. He knows his people. He knows what the capacity. He knows what he can expect of folks. And he has done that work. He's in the midst of it. We have new leaders. We have a new leader at Myers with lots of wonderful potential to be awesome. And we know that we have good, solid leaders also at O'Neill. We also have some additional challenges at O'Neill. The students are coming in there at lower proficiency levels and lower levels than in our other buildings. Which is why it was nice to see some the growth there in literacy in those 2 grades, and we just need those places need time. Cecily and I cannot speak enough about consistency and stability in the system. Sometimes when I get really frustrated and I want to leave, I say I can't leave because I'm stable. It's truly important. It's truly important at the principal level and that leadership level. We have to support our leaders to lead and to stay and to provide those consistent platforms, mechanisms for success.
Ms. Wilson.
Neither of you are allowed to leave, so.
Nobody's allowed to leave.
I remembered my question from before, and I'll be brief, I apologize. It was about the building comparison, and I remember from the presentation, it was about a laser-like focus on the classroom. So it was just another question to that classroom effort still does extrapolate from what I can tell from the data back to the building, which is kind of what I guess Shadar's question was also. So I just wanted to understand that better.
So when we talk to buildings, particularly when we go through the review process, the state process, say what you will about it, I've come to really develop an appreciation for the rubric and the work that I do as a result of it. Like, I would not know my buildings as well if I did not review each and every one of them every year. And as a result of those conversations, what you hear teams and principals consistently say is, well, we have pockets of that. Not everybody does it, but so-and-so does it, or we have it here, we have it there, we have pockets of that. And what we haven't gotten to yet, and which was a focus of a lot of recommendations I left in schools, is, so how do you grow that pocket? How do you begin to spread your best practices throughout your building? And some of that is, Jen asked the question, are there different things happening in different buildings? Some of that is about building culture. Do you have the culture where people will open their doors and let someone else come in and see the good work that they're doing? Do you have the culture where teachers who know that they teach something well are willing to teach it to others? And a little more than half the building said either yes, or we're going to get it there this year because we believe it's important enough to begin to grow the capacity of everyone to be able to do what those pockets can do. So one of the things we've talked about is a lot of the professional development falls on our instructional coaches and our principals for the rest of the building. But if Karen's a great teacher and she does something really well, why isn't Karen providing professional development? And so we're moving that model into buildings where teachers are going to put on professional development for the topics that other teachers have interest in learning, so that we can begin to stop having pockets and have consistent practice across it. Some of our buildings have also been able to build a culture where people are willing to open their doors and go in and do peer visitation. It's not evaluative. It's about going in and learning from a colleague who does something really well so that I can then replicate that practice in my classroom. There's a lot of capacity building that needs to be done in our system. And so, when Karen speaks about consistency, that consistency will help build that trust in those cultures where that type of work can happen. And so that we can stop seeing pockets and stop seeing results all over the map every single year from different teachers and begin to see more consistency. At least that's my hypothesis and hope that I hope to see out.
I'm going to go back to Ms. Lang because she had one more question.
So I just want to say that I've asked for this a couple times, the dual language program. I would like to see the pullout for the numbers there. They do have a different curriculum, and they have SLA that no other program has.
Sorry, Jim, but Dr. Robin from SUNY, who's our statistician, he may have already pulled that for me because I do magnet meetings, so if I have that, I'll
Okay,
send
and
it
I
along.
understand that it pulls out one teacher per grade, and I understand that type. But I would like to make sure that that program is working, or if there is some pullout because it is a different program.
Ms. Smith.
And maybe, sorry. So I'm thinking of the dashboard, the data dashboard. Are we now better? Do we have more information now about our students going forth? So
We have more information, I will
we-
say,
Then
that
we know
some
what to
people
do
know
with
to do with.
So it's
yes.
overwhelming.
So Kent and Tricia actually, the focus of our last 4 months at the elementary principals meeting has been around what the data is telling us and how they're using that data. And so they spent 2 sessions with Kent and Tricia diving deeply into the dashboard, just seeing everything that's available for them to look at. And so what we're now doing is streamlining what we're consistently looking at every single building at set intervals throughout the year, and what questions we're asking when we look at that data, so that everyone is looking at similar data at the same time and arriving at similar conclusions, so that we get consistent practice across buildings. Because if I ask the principal now, one principal looks at this, one principal looks at this, because there's 10 million reports that you could look at to make determinations about what's happening in your building.
And when do we do that for like the next school year? So we know, for instance, I don't know if you're saying, or if people are saying that we were somewhat surprised by the population going to O'Neill, right? You're saying they come in with significant challenges. Are we able to look at data and say, oh, we know where these kids are when we come in? So okay. And I was just wondering about what point at which we know that and really focus on
we know
what. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Savage?
I just wanted to take a minute to thank you again for the frankness of the conversation.
Oh, always.
Not always, actually.
Oh.
This is a radical. But this is a radical change from my first year on the board, when a lot of what was happening under the hood was being masked with pretty words, and being able to talk about the urgency of the change that we need to see, and being able to recognize that we are doing everything we can for every child, but that there is a serious problem that we are still trying to address, and that we're frankly talking about it is very much appreciated. And we all believe that every child in Albany can learn and will learn. And we know that everyone is working to figure out how we can make that happen. And being able to speak frankly about it and where our challenges are doesn't make that part not true. So I really appreciate it.
So I'm saying, geez, God, because Anne saw me getting teary because, and then she stole what I said, because this is my last academic conversation with you, Dr. Wilson Turner. And so I wanted to end about this because you're going out on leave in my last budget year, and to say that I lived through those radical differences. I lived through the lack of systems, and that was through, this is my 4th superintendent. So I lived through that, and it is 18 months, and it is stability, and it is the work in the buildings that is finally being done, and the support for building leadership and understanding. And we talked about this over the years when it wasn't taking hold yet, that they are in every piece of research the levers for growth in a building. And if you don't support your principals and you don't help them grow and become even better leaders than they start out with, even if they have that flicker, then they can't help the teachers, and they can't help the support staff, and they can't help the guidance counselors, and they can't, because everybody, we always say, what somebody else quoted something once, people don't get up in the morning and go somewhere and say, I'm gonna show up at an Albany building and not every day, other than that they want to help children learn. So these conversations that we have when we, ask Melissa Hasty, so why is that looking that way? And then Dr. Chator, I think it was, who asked you the question, so what is it that's stopping it? Those are so critical and so important. And I'm so thankful that this board is a stable force that allows stability in the staffing, allows stability in the buildings, and allows for continuity so that things can take hold. And I said that when we talked about the graduation rate a number of meetings ago. Well, this isn't 50 years in the making, it's not 20 or 10. And this work, I know, has to do with the consistency in getting it done. And the fact that, I'll end by just saying that you are creating a change in culture and I see it, which Jody talked about it at the high school here, but you're creating it in your buildings when you say that people are now willing to open doors and have, at a time when there were times when there was no shared prep time and people weren't doing that work together, that now you're creating in buildings through wonderful principals and their support in the building, places where they can learn from each other, where staff can talk and create that PLC, that professional learning community, is just nothing short of miraculous. Because at the end of the day, we are still a poor urban district, not getting all of its foundation aid, that only a few years ago, the gap elimination was eliminated, and we are still underfunded. And it still costs 3 times as much to educate a child in poverty as it does to educate a child not in poverty. And we continue to not have the money we need to actually get the work done faster. And I'm sorry, Dr. Brandon left, because that's a truism and she lived it. But I will say, and I'm sorry she left for this as well, but we have minutes, that any of the problems at O'Neill, because it's not public comment anymore, were problems this board signed on for because of an appeal that Dr. Kimberly Wilkins made to us, which was when people on the board, Ms. Roach and others, talked about the we were creating a segregated school. We had our council, publicly we said to council, please look at the numbers. Are we opening ourselves up to a concern that we have created, disproportionality in terms of race? And what was said in the minutes, recorded, was, are you saying black children can't learn if they're all together in one school and they're not with white kids? And this board, against its better thoughts about a concern, said, then we'd better we better have equity there, and it better be staffed so proficiency that they're coming in behind the 8 ball on is not accentuated nor actually not worked with to then get them what they need, that group of children coming in, because it was proficiency. So we don't talk in public comment, but darn it, I'm going to say it now, and that is just a falsehood. That is untrue what was said tonight. That is not what happened, and the minutes bear it out. And again, we did and deferred, and we did because we were told we were being supported, and it was temporary, and we were going to put in place what was needed. So we have talked about equity for a long time, and if there's more that's needed there, even with the short, dollars we have, we need to put it in place. But it is certainly not from the lack of effort from staff or from this board to not take care of its most vulnerable children and to show that every child can, as Ms. Savage said, succeed and should have every opportunity every other child has. So thank you for all your work, and thank you for your presentation. If there's no other questions, we will move on. So, Ms. Bechtel, you don't get to move, ever. It's academic calendar time.
I have to stay forever.
So I know that there's not a discussion here because we did have a robust discussion. And I know the board is aware of the calendar that was proposed by staff based on the calendar committee. And I think the best way to engage in this discussion is to start on this side and to basically get a sense of where you are on whether you, because we do need to vote, whether you are, any comments on the calendar? No, Ms. Wilson? Okay. Dr. Chatur.
I'll still ask the same question I asked last time. June 5th, can it be a holiday? Because that's Eid.
It could. It would have to take the place of the 2 holidays that we currently have that are outside the APSU contract, which is either Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. I would also suggest that to have a day off in the 10 days before the Regents exams, that's a challenge that the board needs to consider.
Okay, so Ms. Lang, do you have any comments or questions? Ms. Roach.
So I just wanted to ask quickly, I did not go and compare this to the last calendar. Is this identical to the calendar that you presented last time, or are there changes, and could you go over the changes quickly?
I'm going to answer that. So This calendar is the calendar that was presented before. What we had wanted was to have the board, if they had any changes they would like to make based on anything they've reviewed or thought about, that they could come forward and say, you know, in order for me to, I'm okay supporting this, maybe, you know, for this year, or I'm not okay, or I'd like this to be changed in order to support it, that kind of conversation.
I guess I'm still, as I expressed last time, I'm still with Dr. Jator. I'd like to see June 5th off for Eid. I would consider, even though it's not as great logistically, I would want to swap the March 22nd Professional Development Day for it. If there's any way to make, if there was a way to make that possible, I wouldn't want to substitute Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, but I think it's important that if we're going to have various religious holidays off, you know, we're going to have Good Friday off in a couple of weeks. We consistently have the Jewish High Holy Days off. That it's important that we show that kind of respect to our Muslim students, even if their holidays are not as convenient to schedule due to the different calendar. Just my opinion. I know we might not be able to do it, but it's something I feel strongly about.
Ms. Smith.
I actually do share Dr. Chatur and Ms. Roach's comments, although I'm having a student who's a senior and I don't think she really has exams, but if, you know, but I just don't like to interfere with those Regents exams. But I do want us to continually find a way to support and include our community, other communities.
Ms. Savage.
I feel like we're a little bit in an echo chamber because we're all having the same conversation. And my position is whatever criteria we use to determine that Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah are days off, we should use that same criteria. We should have a set of criteria. I have also proposed that we discuss with APSU some adjustment to their contract so that we don't have Good Friday as a contractual obligation. That is why we have Good Friday off. And I struggle with the fact that we are treating our religious holidays in different ways. That is the problem for me. And I will support this calendar as it stands, but this will be the second year that we've had a robust discussion around this. And this is I know my message has been consistent. Figure out a measurable mechanism. If we base it on the percent of students, if we base it on no religious holidays off, every student gets to take their religious holidays as excused absences as already in our attendance policy. Whatever it is, I think it should be the same. And I do know that there would be uproar among our Jewish community who have been stalwart supporters of this school district over time. And I recognize that if we had to do away with Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah as days off, but I don't think it is consistent with our who we are and have always tried to be as a country, to treat any religion differently than any others. And that is my challenge with the way we have done this.
So like Ms. Savage, I'm keenly aware that this is year 2 of this, and last year I was unhappy about not having the calendar reflect the Muslim holiday, at least one day. It feels, right now, timing-wise, the idea that now, without notice and without any community outreach, we would somehow be shifting Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for the 2018 year, to me is something that the board, if the board did, would be really kind of not a very bad choice. And I don't say that just because I'm Jewish. I say that because I often weigh in on what I think are bad PR, bad community choices made at what I'll consider the 11th hour. So that's that piece. And it's easier, though I'm not happy about it, to say this should be then for next year. But I do think that the board next year will do what it wants, but I think based on the board's perspective, that what it needs to say now is next year we have to see, the board has to see a calendar, the district has to see a proposed calendar from the committee that with measurables, without measurables, or just finds a way to have aid off as in the calendar. That's just what my thoughts are moving forward, but I'm concerned that it shouldn't be happening in the middle of March, needing to approve a calendar. And I think that if that's something the board is going to be willing to, in a sense, charge this early, that it can pass this calendar, even though there are people upset like we are, but do something that wasn't done last year, and we were all, many of us were on the board last year, all but like one, which is to then say, here's what we want done, so it's laid out, and then also to put out information into the Muslim community that while we understand that it wasn't done again this year, here are the action steps that the board is taking so that next year's calendar, when in its preparation, is going to come earlier and is going to reflect that. And so I just think that those steps need to be put in place. It's not your fault. You guys work really hard. It's hard to figure out when 7 people can get together for a board meeting, let alone figuring out a calendar with all of the unions and everything else. So I will support the calendar, but I do think that the board needs to figure out, even while I'm at this point, before even the end of this school year, whether it should, through the policy committee or some other vehicle, send, in a sense, a charge out on it. Ms. Roach.
So I will definitely support this calendar if necessary. I would not support turning Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah into a school day if that's the only option. If there's no option of switching professional development days around. I would not support giving up a Jewish holiday to get Eid off. So, but I would be disappointed if we have to approve this calendar with school on June 5th. It was my impression that we had this discussion last year and we had a lot of community outreach last year, and it was my impression the board discussed this and asked for this if it was possible, and doing this again, kicking the can down a second year saying, not yet, stick with us. It's frustrating to me. I mean, it's not the administration's fault. It's not the board's fault. There are logistical difficulties with a midweek holiday, with a holiday that's near the regions, and I know everybody has the best possible intentions, but I just want to be as clear as possible. Next year, I think we should have this as a holiday. No ifs, ands, or buts.
So I guess the question to ask is, other than Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for next year, for this current calendar that we're looking to approve, is there any other trade-off that can be done for June 5th, independent of regents? And the reason I say that is, remember, the calendar has the issue about AP, and there was a discussion about the AP exams and how that would be worked in. So if it can be done for AP, which we certainly can work through, regents and kids being taught for that, but it would seem. But is there any way to do that? And it's simple to do.
We could take any of the professional development days and move it. We could put March 22nd on June the 5th. I will say, as a school administrator, to run 2 professional development days within 2 weeks of each other in the last 5 weeks of school is not a good use of time. We could take the November 6th day, the election day, but that, we have had the conversations around safety and security, which is in this time is just at the front of everyone's minds. Those are decisions that you could make if you wanted to make those decisions.
So
I would.
So I'm sorry, Ellen.
I would be prepared if we had to, and this is terrible. All the trade-offs are difficult, given that the school budget vote in May typically has a much lower turnout than the general election in November. If we had to have school on that day, assuming that we could put the correct security in place to keep members of the public safely out of the way of our children, assuming that we could, again, given that my understanding is the turnout's typically no more than 2,000 people, 2,000, 2,500 people, if we had to trade off and hold school on May 15th in order to get it off on June 5th, I could live with that.
I'm gonna let our board clerk, Ms. Tibbetts, speak to the issue of school usage.
We use less of our buildings for the general. We only use 5, where we use 11 of our own buildings in May.
And honestly, that goes back to something that I've had a problem with over the last few years was the closing of schools on Election Day, which gave us a lot less flexibility. And I've never understood it. And Karen, I adore you, so this isn't a criticism of, it's just, we don't use all those schools, and in all the years we've been here, we've never had a problem with the we've cordoned it off, we've gotten people in there. So it sounds to me like the board is talking about using the November date in 2018 as the PD day on the general election, which is not a presidential election, it's a gubernatorial one, and then having June 5th be Eid. Now, is that something that's doable?
Again, that puts 2 PD days within 2 weeks of each other in the last 5 weeks of school, which is not.
No.
You
No.
said move November 6th
No.
to June
PD
5th?
PD goes to November.
Okay. It's in November. It's November 6th is already a PD day.
Oh. Oh, okay. So it's not the end of the year. Oh, okay.
So we have the 2 election days are November the 6th and May the 21st. And those are the 2 election days that we have PD on. They're color coded differently because they just have a different designation, but
So people will vote as they will, but I just have to say that it sounds to me like back to what I had said before, which is that I think the board needs to pass this calendar and achieve a clarity that clearly we did. Well, it's clarity and clearly in the same breath. It's obviously late, but actually set out in clearer terms its expectation time-wise and holiday-wise, and even throwing election back into it so that it's no longer verboten for having school open. But I think that that's what the board needs to do. And again, Ms. Lang?
Could you clarify why PD at the end is a bad idea?
because teachers are tired at that time. They're not prepared. They're not necessarily as prepared to learn as they might otherwise be, and they can't really action. They can't really immediately action their learning in their regular daily work.
Can I get a motion to, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. Just before you vote, I did want to point out that there are actually a couple of other things that I want to make sure everybody is aware of, and that is in the middle box. We did put on the other important dates the high school graduation of June 23rd, which I believe that you've been made aware of, and that happens actually before the end of the Regents Week, which is bizarre.
How do you know who graduates?
The way, do you want to speak to it? I mean, I can speak to it. So what would happen if we did it after, normally we're the Sunday after Regents Week, that is June the 30th. So it's last day of June. And what many school districts are actually as many as we know of who have their graduation that week, they're moving it before. What I'd like you to keep in mind is that June the 26th is a rating day, so there are no actual Regents exams. It's really just sort of the wrap up. And then on June the 24th and 25th, those 2 days historically, and there would be no change, we would run probably a few RTI, a few the exams that we run, the special RCT exams on the 24th and the 25th, and we calculated that that would impact a handful of students and not for graduation. Literally less than 10, we talked about? Right. Less than 10 students that would be taking tests on the 24th and the 25th of June, and those students, it would not be about.
So, okay, let me just be clear. Is what you're saying that there are 0 students that will be in the graduating class for 2019 who will be impacted one way or the other in graduation by virtue of the date for graduation preceding the end of Regents Week?
No, no
You're s-
students would be impacted.
Okay, so long as it's zero, because one is one too many. Yes. Okay. Anything else you want to bring to our
And-
attention? Any other
yes.
highlights you'd
I'm,
like to?
I'm glad you gave me that opportunity. So I also just want to point out that in this year's calendar, we have indicated that the 3 through 8 tests are over 3 days each, 3 days in for ELA and 3 days for math. We actually are giving that test 2 days, but the way the state has set it up is they've left those 3 days. It's a little weird, but they've left the 3 days as testing days, and districts get to choose which of the 3 days they're administering the test. This is this year, right? So we are administering in the first 2 days and then using that third day as a part of the makeup period of time. We wanted to actually explicitly define when the testing days are for next year on the calendar. So you'll see April 1 and 2 are our 2 testing days for ELA, and May 1 and 2 are 2 testing days for 3 through 8 math. And that is a change, I believe, from the initial draft that I believe I sent out to you. And I also, on the initial draft, may have indicated the 17th as a Regents Day. I'm not sure if that was on an initial draft. That is not a Regents Day. That'll be a students in attendance day at the high school.
I think the one that we're looking at is the one that you're describing, that, because it's right there. We're looking at 3 days for April, 3 days in May, and 17 for the Regents Day. But you're describing one that only shows 2 and 2 and not the 17th. So we're not looking at the same one you're
Okay,
describing.
I apologize. So what you should see is April 1 and 2 highlighted blue, not 3. And May 1st and 2nd highlighted blue, and not 3, not 3. And then also June 23rd for in the box for graduation. And I apologize, I thought that I had sent this, I thought that I had submitted this, apparently not.
So Ellen just stepped out. Ellen? Or can we call, okay. Can I get a motion to accept the calendar proposed by the calendar committee for the academic year 2018-19? Ms. Roach, seconded by Ms. Smith. All those in favor? That is everyone but Dr. Chator and Ms. Lang. And all those opposed? Dr. Chator and Ms. Lang. And that carries. And I'm just going to suggest, and even though probably for board discussion or agenda, is that not at our next meeting, which will be in 2 weeks, which is a much shorter meeting, but the meeting in April, I'd like for us to put calendar on and to then come up with what we'd like to put in place for next year, what the sort of parameters, we call the what we want done, what we don't want done, and then at least have those set and have it be way in advance. And that way we don't put you in this position, but you're such a good egg. Thank you so much. So thank you, Karen. Thank you to the committee, and we will be much greater clarity, and also adding to that, putting out the outreach, not for you, but outreach into the Muslim community so that they understand that it's not just words again, but actual meaningful, and that it's going to be handled that way. So we are on to the next topic, which is Bill Capital Reserve. No.
I think we've exhausted my audience out there. My first topic is the capital reserve, and this evening staff is recommending that we establish a new capital reserve in the amount of $18 million. We have an $18 million capital reserve currently, but it's actually becoming exhausted. There's a limitation of lifetime deposits. In that, we're closing in on that number. So the recommendation for your consideration is to establish a new capital reserve. Just very, very briefly, a capital reserve is a financial tool. It's set up for a specific purpose, to save for anticipated future cost. It also can be used as one financial tool to help manage the fund balance because there are limitations on that every year. And as a footnote, the Office of the State Comptroller considers the use of reserves as prudent financial management. So at this time, there's 2 steps to the process, one of which is to create capital reserve, which is, in a sense, is a financial bucket. There's no funding being requested. We're simply asking that that tool be created. And this would allow us to put any future savings that we could put aside to put them into the capital reserves, which ultimately would be used for capital projects. To create a new capital reserve requires a board resolution. In order to it to be useful this fiscal year through June 30th, we would need a board resolution at the next board meeting, and then a public referendum in May just to establish the capital reserve. Once the capital reserve is approved by voters, the board can then pass resolutions to fund it over time. However, any use of a capital reserve fund must still be approved by the voters, consistent with approvals needed for capital projects. Knowing that we anticipate capital needs relating to the middle school level and have an ongoing district-wide facilities plan to maintain all of our buildings, the time is right to establish a new capital reserve fund. So that concludes my presentation. Again, it's a 2-step process. This is discussion. To do it by this June 30th, we would need a board resolution at the next meeting to create the reserve, and then ultimately the public decides via public referendum in May. So with that, I'll turn it back to the president.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Just a threshold question so that the board so that it's understood what we can do. Since we are not meeting again until April the 12th, on at least what has been posted, but we do know that's a long gap from now, almost a month because of vacation, and there may very well be routine consent that would be helpful for the board to pass in the interim rather than waiting. Is this something that we could then vote on now that we're discussing it tonight, but that we'd be able to then put on and be within the right time if we did this in 2 weeks, at a meeting in 2 weeks?
Yeah, from the staff point, we really just need to work with the council to establish the language of the resolution and referendum, which we could easily do in that time period.
All right, so then it sounds like that's what probably we will do, and given the Good Friday, Holy Thursday holiday, we would be looking at March 28th, and would that be sufficient time for us to come within the time for which a resolution would have to be passed by the board?
Correct. There are guidelines and regulations on the time you need between the resolution and the referendum, and we would meet that time period adequately.
Ms. Wilson?
Not so much a question rather than like a request for the public-facing element of this matter. When you're doing the upcoming budget presentations, will there or could there be like a glossary with a very clear layman's explanation of what this is and what the implications are, and with any sort of definitions?
Absolutely. We'll actually can do a couple different things. One is we put out a very comprehensive budget newsletter before the budget vote. This would be a referendum, just like the board elections and the budget itself. So this would be a piece of that newsletter. And also, once the board adopts the budget in early April, which is right around the corner, we typically get invited to 8 to 10 community presentations on the budget, of explaining to people what's in the budget. This would also be a part of that as well.
Dr. Jator. Ms. Lang? Ms. Roach?
Just wanted to thank you for the presentation. Say that it sounds what you're proposing, you're proposing in terms of the capital reserve fund, as well as what Ms. Adler is proposing is regarding the time frame for the next meeting. Sounds good. I encourage, I'm looking forward to, especially because the next 5-year the next 5-year facilities plan will be coming out soon, and I know that there are some needed improvements to certain facilities and grounds. So I'm excited about essentially setting aside an account to start preparing for those necessary maintenance items in addition to setting aside funds for the new middle school.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Savage.
I want to thank you again for your wise counsel about keeping our options open and making sure that we have a thoughtful process moving forward in terms of our financial planning. I appreciate it. I'm absolutely in favor of doing this. And I wanted to confirm that there would in fact be a quorum for the 28th, as I have airplane tickets that are not refundable and I will not be there.
Can I see a show of hands who will be able to make it to the meeting on the 28th so we can do some routine consent and also have this? That is a Wednesday evening. It would be, we're talking very, very short, like, what? 3/28, March 28th, and hopefully be like right, like 5:30. I think there's a reason something else is on that evening. I think all city chorus, so we were thinking like 5:30, or all city orchestra, so it would be like a 5:30 kind of thing. Show of hands who could be here?
I'll be bringing a friend, but
Oh, I love to see Ian. Ms. Lang, terrific. So we have a quorum, and we certainly understand Ms. Savage not being able to be here. She'll be here in spirit. So I think that that's it. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Hogan. Now,
Thank
budget
you.
hat.
Budget hat. Where's my
Hi, Ms.
co-pilot?
Primero.
Yes.
there's a guy with a hat.
Actually, here are all our files. I see that. Okay, we actually, I think, have a good news budget presentation this evening. So I know the suspense is really going to keep you on your edge. So here's our agenda for this evening, and here's the topics we're going to touch upon. This is the remaining budget calendar, which is rapidly shrinking as we get closer to the board adoption of a budget and the most important day, May 15th, the budget vote date. We display the district's vision, mission, and goals throughout the budget process, just to keep reminding ourselves and let everyone know that the budget is an allocation of resources, and they need to tie to our vision, mission, and goals. So here's the good news part of the presentation. Both the Senate and the Assembly have proposed their own budgets, and both of them are actually calling for more state aid for public schools, which is a great thing. You'll see on this table that the Senate budget is increasing education by 3.8% versus the governor's original proposal was 3%. And then the Assembly is proposing significantly more at 5.9% almost in terms of foundation aid, which is a key factor for us. It's our biggest category of state aid, almost triple what the executive budget proposed. So for us, there's two good things that are really coming out of this. One is they're actually segregating and showing us separately the foundation aid increase, which is good because that, as many of you know, and we remind the governor's office and the legislature every year, that's an area where we're getting about 72% of what the foundation aid formula says we're supposed to be getting every year, which is about an annual shortfall of about 28 million. So since we're seeing there's a lot more money going into foundation aid, that looks at this point in time that's a good, we should actually be in the mix of getting some state aid because we're one of the districts being underfunded. There's probably a couple hundred other ones, but there's many that aren't. So that's very good news. So we'll see how this rolls out. The next best thing that could happen is, and just to give you an idea, the governor's proposal gave us about a $1.8 million increase in foundation aid. So, potentially we should get at least half as much as that again, or maybe double that if we're really fortunate. The next nice thing they could do, or would be very beneficial, if they could pass a state budget by the end of the month, because then there's a recess week, and then that could throw things off in terms of our schedule. So hopefully they will close on the budget at the end of this month. since we last saw you, we've just made 3 adjustments. One of them is in salaries and benefits. Just again, staff transitions. Most of the savings is from 2 retirements. However, one of those was rescinded earlier this evening in the board agenda. So we're going to actually, this is going to, probably half of these savings are going to go away next time. But we'll adjust for that. There was really good news on the health insurance. We're able to take $938,000 out of the budget. We are a self-insured plan. We work very closely with our broker to project these costs. It's based on our actual claims and actual costs. So we trend those and look at 3 years and take right up until through February data to get the best possible estimate for this year. So that's very good news. Our health insurance self-funded plan has been performing very well the last few years. There's one addition which we talked about last time, which is a 0.4 FTE at Hackett for an art teacher. And I've also updated that in the Appendix B as one of the essential items. There were no changes. We did look at 2 or 3 revenue categories closely again, but there were still no changes in those when we looked at it. So we're in a better spot, obviously, than we were last time. At this point, if nothing else changed, in terms of our budget, we didn't have any changes in cost estimates or revenues. We would have about a $1.6 million deficit, which would require about a 1.37% tax levy to close unless we did something else like reduce expense or do something else. And this is typically how we display it. And this number has improved. The last time we were here, it was at 2.27 tax levy equivalent to close, and now it's fallen to 1.37. So that's good. We like the news to get better as we go through the process, as opposed to getting worse. You've seen and you're familiar with the academic plan. Again, there were 3 options. So the next time we meet after the state budget's passed on the budget, we're really depending, a lot is going to depend on state aid, but you're essentially probably going to be considering new investment in the academic plan to one of these levels, or it could be some combination or partial of one of them, and also consideration on the tax levy itself as well. Again, this is just a restatement of our planned use of reserves and fund balance. Upon reviewing again, we actually had to restate the 2017-18, the appropriated fund balance actually increased because we actually had inadvertently picked up a 16-17 number. So what this shows you is we're actually in 2018-19 proposing to use $454,000 less of fund balance and reserves, and that's a positive thing as well, as we're relying less on fund balance and reserves to subsidize the budget. This is our tax levy history, and we always review this at this point in time as well, so that as we think, as more state aid comes in and we're weighing different options, at least you'll know the history. We've had a very good history. We've had, over the past 5 years, on average, the tax increase of the levy has been less than 1%, 0.958% to be exact. And during that time, we've also had to deal with growing enrollment and new mandates and even growth within mandated areas. We also provided you an update on the property tax relief credit. It was a 4-year program. It still has 18 and 19 left to go. And that seems to be an interesting process. For illustration purposes only, we just run a graph to show you our tax levies versus a 2% growth assumption. And it, again, this is how we typically show it. We're projecting 18-19 based on what tax levy, actually on the tax cap is what we do. It's just based on the tax cap. So this kind of shows you that our tax levies, certainly in recent years, are far below even a 2% growth level. And as I just mentioned, they've been averaging just a little over 1%. So that's good news as well. So that concludes my presentation. At this point, we'll turn it back to the president for any questions, comments, or discussion, and that also could include if there were questions on the academic plan as well.
Ms. Wilson? Dr. Chator? Ms. Roach?
All right, this time I do actually have some questions. Thank you for the presentation. My first question is, those revenue numbers, those are still based on the initial state aid runs from state ed in January, right?
Correct.
And it looks like I just went to go look at them now and they're not available, so maybe state ed is updating them. Who knows? But that's good. So we think we might get more than that.
Right. To be conservative, historically, the governor's state aid proposal has always been the most conservative. It either will, in the end, stay the same or become larger state aid numbers. We're lined up to see more state aid because when the Senate and the Assembly both do their own separate budgets after the governor's, and when the Senate and Assembly both agree there's more money, then they start making a plan of how to allocate that out. And
That's fantastic. I just wanted to confirm that. And I was going through kind of looking at the numbers for option A, B, and C and kind of playing with the calculator a little bit. It looked like, and let me run through this and you can tell me if I'm wrong here. If there's a tax cap of 1.973% this year, and option C is $967,000, we can't do that. Assuming we wanted to do option C, the cheapest of the three options of the academic plan, we couldn't do that without both raising the tax levy to the cap amount and taking more from reserves than we've planned to do. Of course, it looks like this year, this budget has us planning to take $450,000 less from reserves than last year, and it looks like option C would just about be doable if you raise the tax levy to the cap and then take the same amount from reserves as last year. But to get A or B, you would have to raise the tax levy to the cap and then go back and take more from reserves than we did last year, like significantly more, right?
correct. Yep, you're right on. I think exactly as you said. I think we could make it work with some additional reserves and at the tax cap level, and do option A. That would be assuming state aid doesn't change.
Assuming state aid, I mean, hopefully state aid will be to the point where at least C is doable. But right now it seems like unless state aid changes, even C is a stretch, but to me, unless state aid changes, A and B don't look feasible, unfortunately. That's just my thought, and I'm hoping things change for the better.
Ms. Savage, I'm going to jump over just to...
I'm okay to go back to Vicki. I just want to say, like I say every year, we shouldn't get too caught up in what we can and cannot afford until we know what our revenue is. So I am hanging my hat on the Assembly and the Senate continuing to do what they have done for the last several years, which is pass an on-time budget. And then we can have a real conversation about what we can and cannot afford to do. Until we have either an indication that we're not going to get them to pass, in which case we have to make some very careful decisions about risk and reward, or an actual figure. I think it's premature to talk too carefully about anything more than just sort of like, I kind of like this, I kind of don't like that. You see what I'm saying?
You're right. I think I was just trying to say, so based on the numbers estimates now, this is what we'd have to do to get to this.
Ms. Smith, and I don't have any questions for the same reasons, what she said.
I have questions.
But Ms. Savage has more questions.
I have questions, but they're not questions about what we can afford to do and what we can't afford to do. First of all, I really like the slide with the graph. That was a nice addition. I don't remember that from last year, so if you did it last year, I'm sorry because I don't remember it, but I do really like it this year. I think it's really compelling. And I wanted to remind you that I had asked at the beginning of the process several months ago that you try and talk to the assessor's office to try and get a sense of what the anticipated assessment role might look like, because we know that they've been making changes this year, and see if we could get a preliminary insight into what might happen residential versus commercial, because you all recall that we had an unpleasant surprise with that last year. And I wanted to ask about that. I really like the slide where you lay out the historic tax increases over the last couple of years. We have made a concerted effort in this board to keep our tax rate fair to the citizens of Albany. I always struggle with the perception in the community that school taxes are always increasing, and the knowledge I have that the tax levy is flat. And part of what I think is happening is what happened to us last year, which is that the residents paid more. So I'm asking that it doesn't have to be part of your slides, but at least for an SBU or something, provide this slide with 2 additional columns, which are the actual percent change in the residential rate and the business rate for the last 5 years, because I think that will speak to people's emotional reactions about what their tax bill looks like, right? That is their real out-of-pocket cost. And on somewhere in the way you convey that information, I would like to remind people that I believe it was 2014-15 and 2015-16 that tax increase was fully 100% rebated by the state of New York, so it actually had $0 impact on anybody's actual out-of-pocket expense. People forget that check that comes in with the governor's name on it was really only to rebate these taxes, but we relied on that rebate when we made the decision, because I was on the board to vote for the 0.97 tax levy increase, and part of the reason that you counseled that we do that was that we knew that money was going to be rebated. So however you display that, I would like to the rebate factor, because what people really care about, honestly, is not how much money we get. They don't care. What they care about is how much money they pay. And that is what affects property values in the city of Albany, and that is what impacts our ability to attract new residents or not. So we have to constantly, as a school district, be keeping track of this, but as representatives of the city of Albany, we have to be keeping track of that as well. So whether you want that in the slideshow or just a separate thing, I want to see those numbers, please. Thank you.
Well, my face was because there's a fly flying around. It's like, what is it, spring? It's whatever. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Stephanie and Bill. And maybe at the next board meeting on the 28th of March, we will actually have a budget passed. So we have from the state. Wouldn't that be amazing? I'm being really optimistic right now. It's it's an election year, so hopefully they'll have an on-time budget. That may actually be an impetus for them as well. So thank you so much. We're up to board committee reports. Who would like to go first? Ms. Smith?
Well, your facilities committee has been busy yet again. Oops, there's that fly. We met earlier this week, last night. But let me back up. We actually met maybe 2 weeks ago, where we considered the responses to an RFP for basically a database developer, and we did approve the contract tonight, and it was AccuDigital. Is that right? AccuDigital. Yes. And I think we will. You'll be hearing more about that. We also met this week, last night, where we got to actually see some carpets and flooring, and also nice, beautiful colors for the high school by Academy, and so that was really nice. The fun stuff, yeah. And we will be soon rolling out a plan, I believe, with our community advocate to make sure that things are launching there with the outreach work. And the other thing is, I think we have a meeting on April 17th right now, is on the calendar. And that's going to be at Academy Park at 5:30. So we have lots going on. So join us. Did I miss anything, committee members?
No, I think that was lovely and comprehensive. Ms. Savage.
So the policy committee met yesterday. So we've been spending a lot of quality time together, which has been a really good time. And I am pleased to let you know that unless something surprising happens, we will have a field trip policy before us on April 12th, which is something I am thrilled about, and Dr. Wilson Turner is thrilled to be done with that. The other thing that you will see before you is in 2 weeks, or 4 weeks really, because we're not going to bring them at the new meeting, is a Medicaid compliance policy, which is a required policy by the Medicaid folks. And then we also discussed, but they're not ready for you yet, the policies related to graduation ceremonies, which is there's some changes in the law that require some changes in the policies, and then there's some other little things that we're going to insert. And then we will be meeting again in April, and we are still hoping that we can get back to school volunteers, which is one of our oldest policies, so we're still hoping to keep that moving forward. That's on our immediate agenda. So that's the biggest thing that we're looking at in the April meeting. There's a couple of other small ones, but that's the big one.
Were there any other committee meetings? No. Board discussion. Ms. Roach.
I just wanted to report on a visit I had to O'Neill to visit Cindy Clo's special education class and read to them and get a tour of the school. Oh, it sounds like someone else did too. And it was a really, really wonderful, informative. It was a wonderful, informative experience, and I got a warm welcome from her class and enjoyed having a chance to visit. So thank you. It sounds like some of us did as well.
Vicki?
That was really fun, and I spent several hours. I think I was there till about noon with Ms. Clo's class, and it was really just great following them from class to class and participating, and it was really great. So thank you.
Ms.
I
Lang?
did as well. Oh, you were the same? I gave it, I was presented with a tour after a reading Hop on Pop, and we saw the gym, the art room, and the library were their favorite classes.
Anybody else? So since there's no more discussion, I just think, so since wish Ms. Savage a wonderful trip, but everybody else, we can wish you the best when we
wanna
meet
point
again.
out
Oh, Dr. Chatur.
So a couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of going with the Hackett team to GE when they participated in the National Science Bowl. I have to tell you, this is fun. This is amazing. The kids participated in building a derby car, all on their own. What was nice to see was our district. The stuff looked like it was something the kids actually built themselves. It did not look store-bought. It did not look like it was, adults helping them. It actually looked like a product of the children who were on the team. So, and they did it on their own. Things fell apart, and they still carried on. So it was nice to see that camaraderie. The second part of it was a science Jeopardy kind of thing, where they got into this room, and there are 4 people on the team from 2 schools, right? So Hackett versus somebody else, and these moderator was asking them questions, and they had 20 seconds to answer. Our kids held their own. I was so proud of them, so proud of them. So, I mean, next year I would like to see more of our middle school kids participate.
And they have something they can actually transition into, which is masterminds at the high school,
Yep.
JV and varsity. And varsity, again, is in the playoffs, I've been told. So, Ms. Wilson, you were grabbing the mic?
Just to piggyback off the attending and reading to Ms. Clo's class and highlighting that they were excellent at Edmund J. O'Neill about having a student actually do my tour. So that was outstanding. And I wanted to also compliment Albany High for making the news and even in the public discussions just being really positive with their school coordinated walkout demonstration they did.
And I would like to publicly, at least on the minutes, thank the superintendent, because I think that the concept of student voice is something actually you talked about from the time we met you. It's something that I know is something you hold really dear. And you were very kind to thank the administration here, and I know they supported that. But your leadership in helping them understand that our students are really ready for the expression of their voices, and that they are able, even if they're shy in the beginning, to step up and to take those leadership roles is, it's not always easy. it's hard to grasp that they are ready for that, even though many of them are going to start voting soon. And so I think that you were able to, in a very early in your career here, to actually bring that to bear at the high school and to empower them to really be leaders this week. So thank you so very much. It was a delicate situation, and I think we really did lead the way in terms of the district and in terms of the country, because not everybody did that. So thank you so much. Yes, please, because we're, oh my God, an hour ahead. No.
Madam President, members of the board, just so that you're aware, over the next couple of weeks before the break, we will be looking at student selection for the Superintendent's Roundtable, which will be an opportunity for our students to have direct talk time, expression time with me as the superintendent. And then after the break, we'll look at any next steps as far as things that they may see on the horizon that they may want to do, and how I can support them in any of those endeavors. But we are definitely looking at starting at the high school, and we'll see how that goes, and then we'll see how we need to branch out, because I would like to have the students give input as to how do we then involve the middle school and elementary students so that we get the full continuum of student voice. So thank you very much, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
May I get a motion to adjourn? Dr. Chator, seconded by Ms. Savage. All in favor? That is unanimous.